problem. Yeah? Tukubrile kancane.
Yeah, sharp. It's fine. Dabenizwe. Nato.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on stage our MC for the day, Gugulethu Umfupi.
A very good morning, everybody. Oh, let's try that again. We don't sound like we're South Africans who are performing well with our soccer team, Bafana Bafana, at the World Cup. Right? We certainly don't sound like entrepreneurs, financiers, funders, and supporters of economic inclusion in South Africa. So I do think I need to greet you again, just to acknowledge the caliber of individuals who are here in the room, but more so, the mandate that you've all walked in with to ensure that we shift the narrative regarding South Africa's economic performance, social inclusion, and fundamental economic trajectory. On that case, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. There we go. Fantastic. It's a delight and a privilege to have a room full of key stakeholders as you've officially joined us for what promises to be an exciting morning. The official launch of the E-Squared Impact Investing Report for 2025. Now, I do want to alert you to the fact that this is more than just facts and figures that are printed out in a notebook, but really a tangible means to understand the ethos, the mandate, and the purpose with which E-Squared was established, but not just in isolation, but through adequate partnerships. What we're going to detail and share insight on today will be an understanding of how the last year we've seen E-Squared collaborate to ensure that we're able to deploy and unlock capital. And this is just not funding for funding's sake. It's a deliberate, intentional, and most importantly, measurable outcome to ensure that we actively drive the change that we'd like to see in South Africa's economic cycle. Today, we'll get an overview of this report, one that is printed on your table and available for you to read through, not just through the course of this session, but later on as you do leave today. We'll also get deeper insight as to how partnerships through the Fund of Funds continues to unlock so much capital and be intentional around how best it is that we measure these outcomes. So I'm hoping that we're all excited to build up on much of the theme and the tone that will be set this morning, as we will also have an opportunity to hear from many of you here in the room who are entrepreneurs who are doing exactly that. Being the change agents that we need in South Africa's society by going out there, developing projects, ensuring that you too continue to leave your imprint into the socio-economic society of South Africa. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I think to build up the excitement and anticipation in the room, I'd like to see, not just by show of hands, but really perhaps, even if you're able to just share your reactions by vocalizing the number of entrepreneurs who might be present in the room. Many of you will be having the opportunity to share and showcase much of your work in the later sessions that we have today. But just by show of hands, maybe if you want to cheer and shout it out, you know, the number of entrepreneurs that we have here present in the room so far today? Yep. Excellent. You are, my dear friends, the people that South Africa has been waiting for. So even though the macroeconomic environment might grow weary, we worry about interest rates, rising inflation, the political uncertainty. These are all the headlines that I typically focus on a day-to-day basis. Not to raise alarm or even to cause concern, but rather just to create a sense of awareness of the realities you operate in. And whilst that might be your reality, we really appreciate and celebrate and salute the ongoing commitment, resilience, and dare I say, gees and chutzpah to just carry on. So thank you, we acknowledge you, and maybe on that note, we need another round of applause from everyone in the room just to celebrate the entrepreneurs who are here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a very packed program for you today, but one that is exciting and one that will have an opportunity for us to engage and fully ensure that there's a clearer understanding of our mandate, reflections of how far we've come, and most importantly, painting the picture of what the journey looks like going forward. So, just briefly to run through a few of the house rules, we're all well aware that you keep the economy going, but just for the next 2 hours, we request that you do keep your cell phones on silent out of respect of your peers, colleagues and leaders who are in the room and will be joining us on stage, just to minimize any disruptions during the course of our program. There is Wi-Fi available in the room, and of course doesn't require you to log in, but please do feel free to make use of the Wi-Fi for any connectivity that you require. We are not anticipating any emergencies today, so if you hear a fire alarm, take it very seriously. And please do follow through with the safety protocols and the signage of the emergency exits, and follow the direction and leadership of the hotel, as well as event leaders who will guide us to a safe outlet. Beyond that, the restrooms are also allocated right outside to my right-hand side, and that would be on your way to reception here at the Maslow. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'm hoping that we're going to build up the excitement and the momentum. For many of you who might not be familiar with E-Squared, it's a critical organization that truly looks to sit in its purpose and, most importantly, measure those outcomes in investing in Alan Gray Fellow-led businesses, ventures, and, of course, outcomes that not only drive commercial success, but prioritize social investment. Today, we'll be getting some insight as to how best we've grown and evolved within this mandate and understanding the key partnerships that we've been able to establish. But perhaps to set the tone for today, to give us a better understanding of who we are, how far we've come, and why your partnership as a key and critical stakeholder remains important to us, we're going to welcome the chairperson of the E-Squared Board of Trustees to give us our opening address and welcome and set the tone for today. Please give a warm. And maybe I need to remind you, when we say warm, let's remember the energy that we have whenever there's some kind of atmosphere of sporting unity in South Africa. We celebrate the Springboks, we congratulate Bafana Bafana, but we also need to acknowledge the successes we make within the financial, economic, and business space. So when we say warm, I'm hoping that it reflects that. Ladies and gentlemen, please warmly welcome to the front of the stage, Lungile Mdluli, chairperson of the E-Squared Board of Trustees. A warm welcome to her, please. You mentioned long dresses. Oh, yes.
Sure. Thank you, Gugu, for that lovely, warm welcome. You've brought such energy to Joburg on this chilly winter's day. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's so lovely to see such a big turnout as we launch the E-Squared Annual Impact Report for 2025. The 2025 annual report shows an impressive growth of the organization and its impact since inception. The question at hand, though, is how does one steward this growth with discipline and with purpose? Scaling impact sustainably is one of the hardest things that any organization can do. It requires a lot more than ambition and capital. It requires the governance discipline to make sure that the growth is genuine. It requires the measurement rigor to know what's actually working. It also requires the institutional integrity to hold course even when pressure pushes towards an easier path. These are just some of the practical demands of building an organization that's designed to endure. As I stepped into the role of E-Squared chairperson in the last year, I took on a role shaped by 5 years of exceptional leadership from Nazim Martin. What Nazim helped build was a governance culture, a strategic compass, and a board that's not afraid to ask the hard questions. This is the foundation and the standard to which I hold myself accountable. Coming from a background of over 2 decades of private equity experience, I'm acutely aware of the advantage that E-Squared's permanent capital structure provides. It allows the organization to be a true patient investor, to stay the course alongside entrepreneurs and support businesses throughout the difficult cycles without the pressures of having a time clock on every investment. This is a meaningful advantage. It allows E-Squared to play a very distinctive role in the ecosystem. However, not having a clock does not negate the need for discipline. Because we don't have external timelines and limited partner obligations, this discipline has to come entirely from within us. It has to come from the rigor of the governance framework, the quality of the board's oversight, the honesty of performance assessment, as well as the consistency and accountability towards our trust deed. This is the obligation that permanent capital provides and creates. The board holds this obligation seriously, and it shapes how we approach every dimension of our oversight role. In the last year, the board directed significant attention to E-Squared's governance infrastructure. We adopted a comprehensive governance framework, replacing a delegation of authority that had become inadequate for the organization's growing size and complexity. We strengthened the E2C investment mandate with clearer eligibility thresholds, tighter transformation tracking, and explicit alignment to our trust deed. We also approved the reconfiguration of the Pathways program on the basis of an independent review, a decision that reflects both institutional maturity and a refusal to protect the status quo when the evidence calls for change. One decision deserves particular mention. During 2025, the board removed jobs created from the organizational performance scorecard. This was not a retreat from impact accountability. It was quite the opposite. Attribution methodologies for job numbers had become inconsistent, particularly across fund of funds investments, and the board wasn't satisfied with a metric that could be reported on, but without being reliably measured. The replacement framework centered on lives meaningfully improved and aligned to E-Squared's big, hairy, audacious goals. This measure is much more demanding, not any less, because scaling impact sustainably requires knowing exactly what you're measuring. Governance that accepts comfortable metrics is not effective governance. The board also scrutinized the FY26 budget with specific focus on unit cost discipline and financial sustainability over the long term. We requested a unit cost analysis framework to sit alongside total cost reporting, and we reinforced the need for stronger segregation of duties and internal controls. These are not mere procedural concerns. They reflect a board that understands the difference between an organization that looks well-governed and one that actually is. Of course, in focusing on governance and discipline, we can never lose sight of the organization's purpose, which remains our North Star. For E-Squared, BBBE compliance is not just a reporting metric. It is an existential requirement. It's embedded in the founding purpose, and it is central to the organization's mandate. In 2025, 92% of disbursements were made to Black beneficiaries, exceeding the statutory minimum. Investment value directed to Black women-owned businesses reached 62% for the year, and 9 of the 14 active E2V investments are female-led. Now, as a girl mom myself, this is a statistic I'm particularly proud of. These are just outcomes of deliberate choices made consistently. These are deliberate choices in how opportunities are sourced, how investments are structured, and how the mandate is interpreted. The board will continue to maintain this high standard going forward. The outcomes of the impact report represent real and meaningful progress. 318 million rands was deployed in 2025, bringing the total to 1.34 billion rands deployed since inception. More than 346,000 beneficiaries were reached. 37,755 jobs were created, supported, and beneficiated. These are not small numbers, and the board acknowledges the quality of the work behind them. These, however, are not sufficient on their own. eSquared's ambition, anchored in the Alan and Jill Gray Philanthropy's goal of meaningfully improving 10 million lives, is massive relative to where the organization stands today. The board is not in the business of obscuring this distance. Scaling impact sustainably means being honest about the trajectory, not just the milestones. The organization now has the model, the capital, and the people to close the gap, but only if it continues to grow with the same discipline and intentionality that has produced these amazing results. As the organization scales, the board will continue to hold itself to the same standard it applies to the portfolio. Capital must be deployed with discipline. Impact must be measured honestly. Governance must be more than process, and purpose must never become decoration. eSquared was built to endure. That is both the promise and the obligation. In closing, I'd like to extend my sincerest thanks to the entire eSquared team for the dedication and care with which you drive this organization. To the team that put the report and the event together, your hard work is much appreciated and not unseen. To my fellow trustees and board members, thank you for your continued commitment and wise counsel. I would also like to thank our partners and co-investors for sharing both the risk and purpose in deploying capital alongside eSquared. It's this collaboration that makes the ecosystem model work. And to the entrepreneurs that we support, your determination to build sustainable businesses is the very reason this institution exists. Thank you.
Perfect. Another round of applause, please, for Lungile. Thank you so much. I think it's critical for us to actually bear in mind some of the headline figures that Lungile mentioned to us this morning. 316 million rand in 2025 rather, that was actually deployed in capital. And also understanding the number of jobs that were created, more than 37,000. That is not something to scoff at, given the realities that we know we face within South Africa's economic climate. And this is not achieved in isolation. It's through adequate partnerships. Of course, ensuring that we identify the correct entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs who themselves will continue to be supported to ensure that we drive sustainability to the outcome of their efforts. But I do want us to rewind and perhaps take a journey and track back to where all of this might have started. A vision that was declared by one of the most prominent and foremost leaders that we have in South Africa's investment and professional environment. The genesis of what we know to be the Alan and Jill Gray Orbis Foundation, and of course, collaborative partners. I want us to cast our minds back to 2007 and perhaps gauge from the audience if many of us remember where we were back then. Do you? Yes, no, maybe? Some of us uncomfortably saying that's when we were born. Perhaps. But I think this is critical because our next speaker is going to take us down not only memory lane, but will also remind us as to how the outcomes we're achieving today were envisioned more than just shy of 20 years ago, and giving us an understanding as to how this continues to be the vision that we will build on, outcomes and support and partnership that we continue to establish, and most importantly, holding us accountable to the goals and objectives that we have not only achieved for 2025, but that we've also set ahead of ourselves for 2030. A gentleman who has been at the forefront of understanding the intersection of what shared value is, the intersection of philanthropy, entrepreneurship, and prioritizing social impact. Someone who continues to lead and guide entrepreneurs, not just in South Africa, but across the continent on his occasional ventures when he's off cycling in markets across the continent. But he's going to give us some insight today and build up on the momentum that has been shared by Lungile. So yet again, ladies and gentlemen, I ask that you give him a warm welcome on stage to give us some perspective today as he joins us, the CEO of the Alan and Jill Gray Philanthropies Group, Mr. Anthony Farr. A warm welcome to you, please.
Good morning. Wow, I'll step back. It's great to be with you all this morning, and thank you, Lungile, for just an incredible positioning of the unique nature and opportunity and potential of E Squared. What I want to do this morning is just to put E Squared in the context of this broader system that the Gray family has created, the Alan and Jill Gray Philanthropies in Africa. And in doing so, maybe answer some of these questions around how do we think about impact? How do we really create these enduring businesses, these businesses that last and have a genuine impact? And if we think about enduring businesses, we were fortunate enough in our group to be given a masterclass over the last more than 50 years by Mr. Gray in terms of what it means to create an enduring business. And I think one of the powerful secrets of enduring is that you set yourself a purpose that is greater than just the immediate success of the business. And in Alan Gray's case, it was always about how do we do what's in the best interests of our clients? How do we change the future of the clients that we're serving? And in doing so, that enduring continues and is built on over that long term. And then we were fortunate, about 20 years ago, Mr. Gray turned his energy and attention to the world of entrepreneurship, of responsible, values-driven entrepreneurship. And just as he had with the business, he set himself this audacious goal of what might be achieved if this was done and committed to over the long term. And we have this phrase here that there would emerge a new generation of high-growth, responsible entrepreneurs who would be at the forefront of the continuing economic and social transformation of the region. And we look at that now, and we look at the incredible achievements of E Squared in the last year and before, and we start to see a picture of that emerging new generation of responsible, values-driven entrepreneurs. But remember, you can see the number below that statement. This was made in 2005. At the time, there were 20 students that were doing a little bit of extra entrepreneurship training while they focused on their studies at university. And people would have laughed at the statement. I mean, what do you mean at the forefront of the economic transformation? But what people laughing at that wouldn't have understood is the power of long-term thinking. And there's a paradox and there's a tension in long-term thinking, because ultimately it's one of the most powerful levers for impact is to stay fixed on a single goal over the long term. But at the same time, when you start out on that journey, it's incredibly fragile. And it looks actually foolish. You have to be willing to look foolish, just as that statement looked slightly foolish 20 years ago, to step into the full opportunity of long-term thinking. And the best example I can give of that is these strange living bridges in the northern parts of India. In that part of the world, they're hit by floods fairly often, and so normal bridges often get washed away in the regular flooding. And so what some people have been foolish enough to do is that they've planted trees or these kind of rubber trees on either side of the river. But then they have to wait, a little bit like E Squared in the early years. And they have to wait. And people are laughing at them, like they're two trees on either side of the river. It serves no purpose. How is this going to make any difference? In the meantime, people are using their bricks and mortar, and they can create a bridge in a matter of weeks, and off people are crossing the river. But slowly, over time, those trees start to grow, the roots start to grow, and eventually they connect. And then what happens is amazing, because those roots get stronger and stronger, they intertwine, each year makes them even more impenetrable than they were the year before. And so when the floods come, and the floods do come, those bridges stand, and they stand for hundreds of years because they are so strong once they've connected, while all the other bridges, the brick and other bridges, gets washed away on a regular basis. And that's the power. That's the, you have to take your time, and you have to look foolish, but ultimately you create something that becomes unstoppable. And so in terms of how we've kind of put together the understanding of how we would support this generation of new entrepreneurs. As a group at Allen & Joel Grey Philanthropies, we have this vision that has grown from those early years. And it's a vision of an empowered, prosperous, productively engaged African citizenry thriving in ethical societies with dignity and hope. And I think it's important to mark at this time that it is specifically an African vision. We really do believe in the power of the continent. We are birthed in South Africa. We are huge supporters of South Africa. We are South African, but we have an African vision. We already working in programs in 6 countries, other countries outside of South Africa, and our global grant making increases that number even more so. So I think Africa only succeeds if we all succeed, and I think we need to remember that at this time. And then it's all very well having a vision, but how do we kind of translate vision into action and to see the sort of results that E Squared has seen? And so this is what we call our theory of transformation. It really shows the journey that we take entrepreneurs on. It's an expression of that long-term intent, right, really from the very beginning of identifying individuals before they've even taken their first entrepreneurial steps, through the launching, through the building, and ultimately to the growing of what we call these African lions, these significant ventures that have reached either 100,000 lives meaningfully impacted or a valuation of $100 million. And you might say, well, that's interesting to kind of have developed a few ventures, but does that really have the sort of economic impact that you talk about? And our reason for having belief in that and the importance of how much of an impact these relatively small number of ventures can have is through something that we've encountered over the years called Schramm's Law, which really talks about how important to the economy are these startups that grow to scale. And why are they so important? Why? Surely it's just a handful of entities, but the reason they're so important is that if you think about it, when there's innovative ventures, they only capture a very small proportion of the value that they add to society. Now that might seem logical. If you think about it, if you think of a company like Apple, it might be worth trillions of dollars on the stock market, but the value that Apple has given to society is many multiples of the valuation on the stock market. In fact, an economist at Yale was able to quantify that separation and came to the conclusion that innovative ventures only capture 4% of the total value that they add to society. So the value of the business is only 4% of the total value that has been given to society. And the magic is that as people that are driven by impact, we don't have to just take into consideration the 4%. We can look at the 96% that has been added to society in terms of impacting lives. So that's why, even though there's a small number and they might have a certain value, the actual value to society is 20 times the value of the ventures that have been created. And it's not just about the value of the ventures. It's the values of the ventures of these African lions. These are ventures that are built for the long term, that are built to last. These are ventures that are at the forefront of their industries, that are building supply chains, that are empowering the systems that they work in. And these are the ventures. These are the African lions that create the impact that we dream about. We started with this hope that that's what would happen, and through the efforts of E Squared and our other entities, we're starting to see proof that this model does work. So far, we have generated in our system 6 out of the 25 African lines that we hope to support and catalyze by the end of the decade. So as Lungile said, there's a lot of work to do, but there's evidence that it's happening. 6 African lines already in the system that has been created. And so I'm going to close by just saying that one of the strengths of Alan was that essentially he planted roots, he planted trees, and under which he would never sit under the shade of those trees. He was building for a future that he would never fully participate in. And there's a power and there's a creativity and there's an innovation that comes from building for that sort of higher purpose that can really have the sort of impact that we dream of for this continent. And so, under the leadership of Gladwin and others, we've got a lot more lines that we want to build. We want to join with the rest of the ecosystem here together today to keep building those lines that are going to start planting those roots that none of us are going to sit under, but we're going to see the fruits in decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you kindly, Anthony, giving us a clear reminder of the ethos that we're actually building on and an understanding of the shade that we are able to enjoy right now. And a gentle reminder that as you enjoy the fruits of the foundations that have been laid by the forefathers ahead of us, that we too need to disperse those seeds, continue to plant them to generate more trees that establish roots and build for future generations. So a bigger picture and a bigger purpose that we need to keep in mind. And for the entrepreneurs who are typically in the room, I can imagine for many of you it's been quite a journey. Sleepless nights, restless moments, times of uncertainty, and of course, maybe even frustration as to where the capital is. Those enough who are familiar with Tom Cruise might remember the line, "Show me the money." And I say this because that's often been the frustration that many entrepreneurs share. Where is the capital? Where is the funding for me to establish my roots, to plant this tree and for it to actually have tangible, sustainable outcomes for the future? Well, clearly, when we take a look at the reality in South Africa, there's no shortage of funding and support for entrepreneurs. But the truth is, we do need to find ways of collaborating correctly and even educating more players in the market to find the right kind of capital to suit their business needs. And someone who takes his time digging into the data, specifically related to private capital and unlocking the realities of where the money is, but also where the money is going, will be joining us on stage as a key contributor as well to the report that we have in front of you. And I do want to encourage you at some point during the course of the day to take your time musing through the numbers, which give you greater perspective as to how capital has been allocated, specifically from an E-squared point of view, when it comes to seed capital, all the way through the various divisions of growth that are available through the venture fund, and of course understanding partnerships through funder funds and social impact investing. That's where the detail lies to fully understand the measures and the metrics we're working towards. But ladies and gentlemen, as we look to understand what the reality looks like regarding capital, specifically private capital in South Africa, where that private capital might be flowing to, but more so, how it is that we really need to capitalize on the growth and opportunities that exist in South Africa, is a man who sits behind the research, continues to partner with institutions like E-squared, and of course joins us as a strategy facilitator, as well as representative of VS Nova, prioritizing research. Please warmly welcome to the front of the stage, Mr. Stefan Lambrecht, who joins us to give us some insight and a presentation into a better understanding of the lay of the landscape. A warm welcome to him, please.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thanks, Gladwin and team. And as always, very nice to also share in the good news and also look at the progress that we've created over the last couple of years. My presentation this morning is really just talking about the numbers, but then contextualizing that also in the context of what we're talking about here, which is around building businesses. These numbers in themselves data points. We have the ads on TV that says we're not just a data point, I'm not just a number. There are real people behind these numbers, people that are building businesses, people that are risk takers, people that are making difficult decisions, but at the same time, people that have got the passion for what they do. And importantly for me, I think one of the key insights for today is that when we talk about these entrepreneurs, a lot of those entrepreneurs are not just the people starting up businesses, but our fund managers themselves are entrepreneurs in their own right, taking risks to create businesses that are on a journey to grow to the point of really being sustainable and being able to feed into the pipeline and the requirements that we want to see for the future. Good, so I think just holistically speaking, if we look at the broader picture and where we've come from over the last couple of years, and you'll see the picture there on the left-hand side, just talking about the last 10 years or 15 years, more or less from 2010 onwards. And you'll notice there, we've built on a lot of momentum that was created that took quite a long time to get off the ground. And I think for me, this whole picture speaks to one thing, and that is collaboration. This was not a picture that was developed or a journey that was embarked on and that is today being driven by one or two individuals, but really a collaboration. And a collaboration from a fund manager point of view, from an entrepreneur's point of view, from people spending time based on what they've learned, not just locally, but globally, and increasingly also taking hands, not just internally, but also with other stakeholders, including government. And where we are today, and we're talking around 13.5 or 14 billion rand in assets, might be small in comparison to other asset classes. But this is speaking specifically to early stage growth entrepreneurship. And this has come from very, very small, if you look there around 2000s to 2010, where we did over a year what we're currently doing in a month. And that is accelerating, and it keeps accelerating. We're currently formulating the data packs for this year's SAFCA survey based on the numbers that we've received, and that trajectory is increasing. Importantly, if you look at the right side of the picture, this is not just around venture capital, this is not just around capital, but it also talks about the industry's ability to create jobs, the ability to transcend sectors, to develop new sectors. When we start talking about public capital and we're talking around public sources, then really digging into those areas where we see the future for our economy, where we might not have invested in those sectors in the past, and therefore needing those kind of collaborative partnerships to unlock the risks and the capital requirements that sits there. Key challenges that we face, very eminent. If you look at the typical age of a venture capital-backed entrepreneur in the United States or in the developed markets, we're talking towards the late 30s to early 40s. Because a lot of people spend time either doing a lot of further studies to develop that unique IP, so doing a PhD or spending time in a research position, or they might have spent 10 or 15 years in a career where they've learned really to understand a problem that they would like to capitalize on. In South Africa and the rest of the developing world, a lot of those entrepreneurs are much earlier into that growth journey of becoming an entrepreneur for the sake of entrepreneurship being a last opportunity, entrepreneurship being something that comes to their door a lot earlier than what is happening in the rest of the world. And that means that those kind of entrepreneurs need a supportive ecosystem. They need the networks, they need the introductions, they need to have the business understanding and acumen that a lot of entrepreneurs in foreign markets might have gotten in their corporate employment or in their previous careers. At the same time, when we're talking around startups in South Africa, as in the rest of the world, typically these startups are majority self-funded. It's less than 5% of your typical startups that look towards venture capital. Well, I would say most look towards venture capital, but less than 5% actually get a door that opens for them. Because venture capital is not suited to every kind of business. So therefore, when we're having this conversation around startups and around entrepreneurship, keep in mind that this is not just a venture capital conversation. However, if we look back, and for those of us that's been around and that's been there in the beginning, where we started having discussions around our recall in the beginning, 2000, government published their white paper on science and technology and very boldly made the vision to say, but we don't want to be a dependent country where we are living off the proceeds and the insights that are gathered and developed in the rest of the world. We actually want to do it ourselves. And therefore, we have this vision for really supporting entrepreneurs and supporting science and technology and innovation in our economic sectors. And therefore, out of that vision grew this whole pathway that we've been on, and that was encapsulated in that graph there on the left-hand side. But when we stood around the early 2000s and we had these conversations, we bemoaned the fact that there's no capital, there's no appetite. There's only maybe 3 or 4 fund managers. Those of you recall Yerby Dragons from Mark Shuttleworth. In the beginning, the Technology Innovation Agency that we know today being, focused mostly on biotechnology-related startups. So we've taken a long way, and if you look today, we've got a recognized VC industry, we've got diversity in terms of sectors, in terms of participations, in terms of stages, some earlier, some later, and we've got a support system that is not just around capital, but really tapping into incubation, into acceleration. One of the key challenges, and that was until relatively recently, was the issue of saying, okay, if we build it, are they actually going to come? So if we have all this capital, where are we going to get the doors that open for our products and services? And corporate South Africa, to a large extent over the last 10 years, has really opened up its doors through its own insights on where they need to look for innovation. And we start seeing a lot more of our entrepreneurs that are getting funding, not just from the primary investor, but also from co-investors that are opening up doors in that supply chain. So we've come a long way. I think just a very quick snapshot from last year's venture capital survey, looking at all the investments in early stage surveys. So keep in mind that these are not private equity transactions, but really early stage venture capital startups. The point that I want to point out here is the increase that we've seen over the last couple of years are related to co-investment. So early stages, when the industry started, there was one investor going to one transaction, trying to not tell everybody else who they're investing in, where now when you go and look at the typical round, it involves a number of investors, and some of them also those that are in the uptake environment. A big part of that collaboration is also around investors and co-investors that are outside of South Africa. So we're recognizing the scalability of this industry, but we cannot scale alone. Looking at E squared and contextualizing what we're talking around today around impact, important for me to point out that it's very clear from E squared's offering that there's an understanding that entrepreneurship is a systems problem. We can have all the money in the world, but if we don't have quality entrepreneurs, or if quality entrepreneurs are not getting access to market, we are not going to move forward. Capital alone does not build successful venture ecosystems. So now the question is to say, but how do we scale that, and how do we build investable businesses? Second insight there is around the need for patient capital. So one of the key challenges of our VC sector is very much that it bootstrapped itself, which means that most of our deals in the beginning was done on a deal-by-deal basis. What that means is that when I see an opportunity, then me as the investor go and try and find money, as opposed to having a dedicated ring-fenced fund that I can invest in and over a period of time mature that fund where I'm going to have losses as well as successes. But if I do it on a deal-by-deal basis, it means that all my eggs are in one basket. And that is the way that we've had to do it, but there's obviously cost implications there. And at the same time, it means that to a large extent, we might be holding on to deals longer than what we would have otherwise done because we simply cannot take the chance of risking that one single deal. So we need patient capital that can sit back and say over a period of 10 years or even more, we can allow some of these businesses to start maturing and understand that those that can't need to fail and fail fast because others can take their way and utilize and leverage that capital better. Important, as I said earlier, significant is that we should not just be thinking about backing entrepreneurs because we've got to back the ones that are backing the entrepreneurs, being the fund managers. To a large extent over the last 2 decades, most of our fund management activity has been driven by people that have significant own interests, being entrepreneurs themselves, being people that has gone through it and therefore making some of their capital available because they believe in entrepreneurship. But that makes it very difficult to scale and to get others into the industry. And we've got to go and ask ourselves, but do we understand the business case on how to invest in small and medium-sized startup enterprises? And how can we empower those entrepreneurs that want to be on the funding cycle to similarly be supported to become more successful? And then lastly, today we're talking a lot around impact, but impact might have been something completely foreign to people that were familiar with return on investment as their methodology for investment. But increasingly in the world that we're living in, when we're talking around where our access to capital is coming from and where we need to go, we've got to talk about the impact, because impact is investment growth. And if we understand how we measure that, we can see how we can import impact on that and how we can scale on that. And therefore already that aligns with the thinking that we're seeing out of institutions like E-Squared. We're also looking at other ESD operators in South Africa that have really on an international scale become at the forefront of understanding what impact is and the significant link between impact and the growth in enterprises. Looking forward, where we need to go and what's important, South Africa still has a significant Series A and growth funding gap. So that means that we need to go from the growth point to really the scale point, because it's in that growth that we unlock the opportunities. Every politician, as you are very well aware, in uprun to November, is talking about why we need to support small businesses and why SMEs are important. But it's only a very small subset of SMEs that are really the ones that generate the benefit that we are looking for. And those are the ones that are growing, because when they are growing, they are innovating. They are creating jobs, they are creating opportunities and disrupting industries. So therefore, significant to what we want to do is to focus on those growth enterprises. We're still having an industry that is seeing too few exits, and there are very good reasons for that. Most of our investment activity has been in the last 5 to 10 years. And if you look at the typical VC life cycle, you would expect investments to start looking at exiting towards year 5 to year 8. So we might need to be a little bit more patient in terms of seeing those numbers. But ultimately, we can only say whether or not our fund managers have been successful if we can measure them based on their exits. Otherwise, all we're having is lines in the water, but we don't know if there's anything that's going to come from that. At the moment, most of our fund managers active in this early stage asset class has not had one single exit. So if you're thinking around us, let's say we invest in property and we believe that we're going to buy a property cheap, renovate it and sell it for more, and that's our business model. And we can prove it by actually selling a house and then seeing that it worked. If we apply that in the context of this conversation, how will we know we're doing the right things if we've never gotten to the point of exiting? What should we have done differently? And that's the understanding that we've got to take as an industry, that we really need to support the fund managers and really navigating that journey and really getting the insights from those that have had successes at the exit level. I mentioned already, key interest here is to go from investing in companies that are establishing themselves, but then going from 20 persons to 200 persons. That's where that huge growth and that knock-on effect in the economy comes. Therefore, growth is that magic potion, and that's what we want to look for. Just a very quick comment. When we look at South Africa's ecosystem as a whole, obviously there are lots of people that are also reviewing that, researching that, giving us inputs. Two interesting insights just to put there, and that's not to criticize us because there's a lot of shortcomings in the way that they define entrepreneurship. But if we look at some of the leading indices related to, for example, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor that focuses very much around the entrepreneurial conditions in an economy, and then on the other side, our Startup Link and the Startup Genome that really looks at the output from that ecosystem. And the two interesting messages that come from, firstly on a GEM side, is saying that South Africa is not really yet leveraging and generating the uptake of entrepreneurship that an economy like ours should be doing. If you look at what we've got, if you look at the amount of capital that's in our economy, if you look at the amount of leading companies that are sitting in our economy, we should be having a way bigger startup sector based on that infrastructure and that capability that exists. That's the comment from GEM. At the Startup Link point of view is, if you look at since the beginning of Startup Link, our ranking as a country, as an ecosystem, has always more or less stayed the same. And what that just says is that our growth in this ecosystem mirrors the growth of the economy as a whole. But what we want to talk about and what we're talking about this morning is really scaling, because ultimately we believe that this sector of the economy should be having a considerably larger impact. So we're not criticizing what's been done, but what they are in fact telling us is that we're underperforming. We should be doing a lot better than all those successes that I pointed out in the previous slides. So over the past 15 years, we've become significantly better at identifying and supporting those high potential entrepreneurs. The next challenge now for us in the next couple of years is how do we scale that? But importantly, how do we create a viable pathway to economic participation and wealth creation? If I'm sitting out there and I've just recently graduated and I've got all the credentials, what is the first thing I'm going to do in today's economy? If you think about the typical South African, what do I prioritize? Spending the next 5, 10 years pursuing a market opportunity, something that I've maybe come up in my research or that I've seen when I looked at what others are doing? Or is it to take a job so that I can get a car and I can get a salary and I can really apply that back into my community, because that's where the biggest need is? So that societal support for entrepreneurship is not yet there. And that's our challenge. How do we take what we believe in this audience and what we've got the evidence for to really take that to the rest of our youth and our economy, to get them excited about entrepreneurship? So where to next? I think the first early years we've created an answer to address the question of, can venture capital work in South Africa? Most definitely it can. After 2013, when we started seeing a lot of uptake in new fund management activity, we demonstrated and answered the questions to say, but can startups scale? We've had tremendous successes around the country. We've recently, Alison, I'm looking at you and looking at the study that was recently done around exits and successful exits that we've had in this country. There is fundamentally no reason for our countries and our country's entrepreneurs and startups to not play on the world stage, and we've got more than enough evidence to prove that. Can fund managers raise capital? Most definitely, they can raise capital. But now how do we scale that? And that's where we've got to focus looking forward. Can we create repeatable exits? So can I apply the lessons that I've learned and do it better next time? Can we recycle talent? So people that have gone through this entrepreneurial system, learned the lessons, bring them back in their next venture, either as a startup entrepreneur or as a fund manager. Can we recycle capital? So some of these large investments and the follow-on investments that's reported here that took place elsewhere, can we see that coming back into new funds, additional investment opportunities? Can we scale fund-to-fund platforms? An exciting part that is rapidly developing at the moment, and you know this because we've had this conversation about 2 years ago, is around this intermediary between our institutional investors like our pension funds and our VC fund managers. And that is very much looking towards fund-to-fund investment vehicles and rapidly taking off, where we've had maybe 1 or 2 as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, and now it's becoming a way to unlock new opportunity based on the investment case, as opposed to us trying to do something that we've not tried before. So importantly, lastly, can we make an ecosystem a leading driver of economic growth and impact in South Africa? Do our economists, do our economic leaders in this country recognize this industry and see it for what it is as really a way to unlock the future for our economy? My last slide, just to make the point that when we look at the differences between entrepreneurs and fund managers within the context of this theme of really building enduring businesses, you will look on the one side, looking at entrepreneurs and looking at fund managers and recognizing that we're basically talking about the same things. We're looking at capital, we're talking about either building a company or building a fund, but in both instances we need support. And oftentimes we've not estimated or underestimated the extent of support that's required in fund manager teams. Both needs to become sustainable, both needs to be measured in terms of success. Am I pushing something or is somebody else pushing something? Sorry. That's not me. Okay. Let me see. Okay. So important insight when we look at our fund managers, saying at the bottom, we cannot live on funding forever if I'm an entrepreneur. I need to generate revenues and profits out of my business. At the same time, as a fund manager, I cannot live on fees forever. I need to also create that opportunity that's embedded in that carry or in that knock-on effect once I close the fund and I go to the next one. So the objective here is not to create funded entrepreneurs or funded fund managers. The objective is really to create self-sustaining businesses that can survive and thrive without continued dependence on ecosystem support. So to wrap up, we've made remarkable progress. I think we've come a long way. It is remarkable, and I really appreciate the analogy of the trees and the picture of the trees, because if you look back at this picture, at many times it felt like, how are these things ever going to scale? How are they ever going to get to a position where they can support each other and they can fill in the gaps? But looking back now and looking over the last 15 to 20 years, it's very clear how those trees have grown and really created the strength that is making this an enduring industry, not for now, but very much also so for the future. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and well done on the work done. Thanks.
Stefan, I'm going to take an opportunity to keep you on stage a little longer. You cannot share such fantastic insights and not ask us to probe you any further. So I firstly thank you. I think that really does give us a lot more color and context around the reality of the environment that we're working in. And as you've described, a better understanding of the opportunities that we need to capitalize on. I am open to taking at least 2 questions from the floor, if we may. I think we do have the thumbs up on that. So if there are any questions, please feel free to raise your hand. We're probably putting on the spot here, Stefan, but there's no question we can ask you that you can't answer. What you're describing, especially that last slide, particularly related to the entrepreneurs, but also the fund managers, clearly shows that there's a lot of work to do within the ecosystem as a whole. A lot of the times when this happens, we tend to say policymakers need to change things. Regulation should be updated. I'm not certain if there are any representatives from government here in the room, but the truth is we can't wait for them. So what is it that we can do as entrepreneurs and fund managers who are present to actually ensure that we're able to now accelerate on the efforts and the weaknesses that we have to strengthen them, to essentially better the ecosystem?
Thanks. I think government is doing a lot in recent times, especially if you look at the Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, around the rethink of the Innovation Fund mechanism, which to a large extent sits behind some of the fund-of-fund investments that we've seen over the last couple of years. That needs to be strengthened. I think a key insight from the review around how they've done that was around the fact that there's insufficient understanding in the public sector of what venture capital is and how venture capital works. So therefore, if I have to come up with policy, I really need to understand what the constraints are, and that's a conversation that we need to keep having. The second part is, as an industry itself, I think one of the fund managers, I'm not seeing him here, but he often makes the point to say, but do we ask ourselves as fund managers the questions we very quickly ask our entrepreneurs? And would we as fund managers be able to ask that? So when we talk around the sustainability of how we're doing this, how are we going to turn this around? I mean, a lot of our challenges stem to fees not being sufficient for us to really operate the teams that we need to have. Hence the need to have additional capital and more capital going to our fund managers. Are we answering those questions, and are we able to really spend time not just on micromanaging our entrepreneurs, but thinking back of how do we create a business and an investment case? Because if we want to go to the old mutuals or the pension funds and ask them for money, but we cannot present them with a case of making the point of, how are they going to protect their interests by giving us capital, then we're going to stay where we are. And that's critical. It needs to happen.
Got you. Just gauging from the audience, number one, if there are any questions, please raise your hand. It gives us some time to get the mic to you. Ma'am, your hand has been noticed, as well as yourself, ma'am. As the mics move in this direction to the 2 ladies, please keep your hands up. It's just easier for my colleagues to identify you. I do want to gauge from the audience, any, township-based entrepreneurs or businesses that might be based within rural areas of South Africa? By show of hands. 1. You, ma'am, are a clear reflection of the press. 2. I'm seeing 2, 3, okay, 4. Okay, Stefan, this is telling, right? Because one of your slides actually showed that there's a disconnect as to where venture capital is flowing in particular. Rural and township economies being left out at the periphery. Joburg, Cape Town still receiving a large chunk of that capital. How do we fix this? And maybe the entrepreneurs in the room might also have some feedback to share.
Maybe we should take some more questions first before I answer.
We'll give you time to think about it. Ma'am, you have a microphone. If you could please, where's the mic?
I can give it a stab. I think the first part is that it's not around the question of venture capital, but it's around the question of ecosystem. And we've got to go and ask ourselves, how are we really putting enough effort into creating those ecosystems also in our township and rural areas? We see that a lot of businesses, if you take yourselves that have got ancillary interests in the insurance industry, there are people based all over South Africa that have got the needs for the products and services that we produce, not just people in Cape Town and people in Joburg.
Yeah.
So therefore, why is the innovation not taking place there? And to a large extent, it's because the ecosystem is not there to support them. Venture capital is an element of that ecosystem, but venture capital can only work and operate if it is supported in that context that is really going to bring all these additional support systems that is necessary to get that entrepreneur from the ground to being successful. So we got to work on those ecosystems and not just take it as a given that it's always going to be Joburg or Cape Town.
Got you. That's important. I guess also focusing on scalability, not just the support, short-term support for those particular businesses. I've hogged you to myself for too long. Ma'am, you have a question. Please stand up, introduce yourself, and go ahead with your question. We'll move the mic then promptly to the second hand that was raised, just in the interest of time.
Good morning. Thank you so much, eSquared, for having us here. My name is Tulim Tetwa. I'm from Emeza Community Safety. We innovated the first public alarm systems that work with the police for low-income areas, which is an innovation, and thanks to eSquared, we are rolling those out to vulnerable areas. I'm very glad that you linked what we are about today to the Department of Science and Industry and to what they are trying to do. We have a national system of innovation, they call it the NSI. It is managed by the Department of Science and Industry. They look at...
Ms. Mtetwa?
Yes.
I hate to interject, but in the interest of time, we'd like you to get to your question, just to ensure that we're able to get a response from you.
Yes, so the point is the government looks at indicators of science and technology and innovation, looking from publications that have been made, looking at the actual hardcore innovation investment that are being made. They don't look at the impact that social innovation does through what eSquared does. Like today we are here, we are discussing that. So the data that is currently available nationally on science, innovation, indicators is missing, it is lacking. It does not take into consideration, for instance, the 36 million rands that eSquared invested in social investment. It does not take into consideration the 37,000 jobs that eSquared funded through what they are doing, impact investment. It does not look at all the social innovations. It does not look at civil society and what civil society is able to achieve nationally, job creation, dignity restored, toilets that have been...
If I may, so is your question related to how, if there's more insight on the data in terms of partnerships and a greater impact that is made in society?
My question is about we as civil society and impact investors like yourself do not contribute on a national scale to the data that is available on social impact and social impact indicators. For instance,
we'll ask you to pause it there, Ms. Mtetwa, only in the interest of time, but I do think that this question actually might be better directed to perhaps representatives of eSquared who will be on stage and will be able to defend the numbers and provide more insight into just how the numbers were corroborated. We'll pause it there, but thank you for your question, ma'am. We'd like to move the mic on to you, ma'am, if you could go ahead with your question.
While she's getting ready, just a quick response to what you're saying, and you're absolutely right. And to a large extent, that is one of the positive parts in terms of government moving towards this fund-of-fund space, where they're recognizing that they are not the ones that are necessarily able to interpret the data to the point of really getting the money to where the money needs to flow. And they need to entrust that to those that do. So that's one part of the response. But That is government's mindset, and I say in government inverted commas because we know that government is government, but there is a broader outlook to say, but we need to empower the people that are working with our entrepreneurs and that are working on the ground so that we can get the capital to them and empower them to make the right decisions so that we can get the outputs that we are looking for. Government, I mean, this whole Innovation Fund instrument is run by two or three people. There is no ways that they can interpret that amount of data or have that kind of insights. But those data and the insight sits in this room. So let's get that to support the people that are at the coalface of what needs to happen.
Got you. We will address this in a panel discussion as well, so we will come back to reference it to see how best we can collaborate, not just E-Squared, but with other key players in the industry.
Hi, morning. My name is Nabila, and I'm from an organization called Edge Growth. We're one of the funders like E-Squared with 2.5 billion rand of AUM. My question, Stephen, is you raised that collaboration is an issue in this ecosystem, but I think I'm struggling with what does that mean practically? Because I think we always say, oh, collaboration, collaboration. But what does it mean practically, and from your vantage point and standpoint, what does it mean when we're saying an E-Squared and an Edge Growth collaborate? What does that look like?
So I think the first part is one's got to be clear what is collaboration, and there could be different ways of framing it, but it is around sharing information. It is around sharing data so that we have informed views in terms of what's really happening on the ground, that we are not managing by perception, but we are managing based on the facts. The third part of collaboration is to work together, so to recognize that all of us have got different skills. So in your example of E-Squared and Edge, that might be a little bit of a different collaboration than, for example, Edge collaborating with the automotive industry development chain and saying, but how can we bring our funding expertise to your insights in terms of what needs to happen in the motor industry? And that's really where that collaboration needs to unlock, especially if you go back to the previous point of collaborating with government. Maybe government's role is very strong only at the policy level. Should we get them to hand over more of the implementation and the allocation to those that have got the strength to do that? So that's what's meant with collaboration. And that's where we got to focus.
Got you. So a key objective I think that many of us need to be mindful of is perhaps increasing and improving the transparency. But solid themes that have been raised, and these will be addressed in two panel discussions that we will have later on during the course of the day, during our program, to adequately understand from role players, from participants in the ecosystem, what they have done, but also what we can do going forward. Stefan, thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. I have a funny feeling that we're all going to try to corner you for more information and insight today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. A round of applause, please, for
Thanks.
Stefan Lambrecht, everyone. Okay, this is where the program gets exciting, right? Because we love that we have your thinking caps on. We've given you the information, the overview of it. We've given you some insight into understanding its history, but more so the data of the lay of the landscape. And after this tea break, we're going to have an opportunity to dig deeper into those numbers and fully understand what they entail, coupled with two panel discussions to give us more clarity. The questions that have been asked so far, we certainly will pull at them to ensure that our participants can respond to them, but it doesn't leave any of you in an isolated area. More than anything, this is where we want you to come back with more questions to adequately engage and probe even further how we work together as funders and financiers in the industry, what needs to change within the ecosystem, but also how it is that we actually adequately meet the needs of the entrepreneur. And for entrepreneurs, this actually means that you need to share much more of your data and insight, including the funders themselves. But for the moment, we're going to take a brief break, ladies and gentlemen. We're slightly over with our program, but we've got about a 10-minute tea break that we'll participate in just a moment. But to lead us to that tea break, one thing that E-Squared has prioritized is an amazing opportunity to showcase proudly South African talent, the creative sector. And just this morning, we were entertained by an amazing band that introduced us with their jazz music and beautiful notes and symphonies as we all got to settle in our seats listening to their harmony. They're going to make their way back up now to the stage to open up with a performance. And I do want to give you some background into the group. Speaking to the lead vocalist just this morning, you'll be pleasantly surprised to know that he's actually head of legal? Head of legal at E-Squared. But, yep, let's acknowledge that. And I say this because so often we like to box people into certain spaces. That if you're an artist, you're all artsy-fartsy. If you're an entrepreneur, you're punching the numbers. And if you lie somewhere in between, we don't know where to place you. But this is an opportunity for us not only to relish in the music, given the 2 songs that they're going to sing for us, but also to acknowledge that there are opportunities for us to partner with peers and players in various ways. So we're going to warmly welcome back to the front of the stage as they do lead us to the tea break. They'll perform a song or 2, if I'm not mistaken. From there, we'll have our tea break. It's about 11:25, but we aim to commence with the program again at 11:40. At 11:40 to continue with the remainder of the program. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you'll do me the pleasure and the privilege of welcoming individuals with intellectual capital and insight, but are still brave enough to partner with their peers to form a band and a group called Imvemnyama. Please warmly welcome them back to the front of the stage to serenade us with their harmony. Really?
Ngisele amayeza okukhipha kwa baba okudilange kwa baba oqikhundite ngisele amayeza okukhipha kwa baba okudilange kwa baba weqirha diskenda patwa lufalo bensinindamla ndisolo kwavele kwachafa matolo wemajita buzanuntata kancane Banote saba mantombazane Dizomlanda kusasa Benkela nyekukumbangeli stress Lona ngizomgena nge-SMS Futhi kusasa ngizomthengela ne-PS abengowa Diyafunga mwi uyobengowa 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 Wentombi Bendicela ukuthetha nawe kancane Cela ubuze igama lakho Xa ndithetha inyani undichazile wentombi ukhetha icephe elidala noma elitsha ngabe uyanifaka noma uyanikhipha cela undikhaphe ndiyonxiba ijezi wathi ndizolanda kusasa impendulo ngoba namhlanje usathunyiwe ndithi liyothi lishonela ngomso abe ngowa ndiyafunga mnci uyobe ngowa thungisanibo uyobe ngowa ndiyafunga mnci 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 uyobe ngowa thungisanibo uyobe ngowa ndiyafunga mnci uyobe ngowa thungisanibo uyobe ngowa ndiyafunga mnci uyobe ngowa thungisanibo uyobe ngowa ndiyafunga mnci uyobe ngowa Sanibo uyobe ngowa ugqirha ndithengisele amayeza okukhipha lekababa okudila ngekababa Namaqala ngamna askila wodwa athini khathi ngowa sobukhele ngamna nakipotwela ngobukoboka dingawili qowa namaqala ngamna askila wodwa athini khathi ngowa sobukhele ngamna nakipotwela Go, kulondincede. 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 Lama kalangamda, ayasjelota, ayasje, batin kating owa, so gelamga, aso se fume, koma bastela botwa, koma bastela bo, koma bastela botwa, koma bastela botwa, koma bastela bo. Oma bastela botwa kulondincede kulowa jakwazi uthanda mehlo abantu ufuna ukuba ngowodumo uvele kumabona kude mna ngishiya nabani na kulowa jakwazi uthanda mehlo abantu ufuna ukuba ngodumo ube kumabona kude na unishiya nabani na ayimkulowa 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 ayimkulowa
Shoo! What phenomenal talent, right? I don't want to let the moment pass because I think everybody in the audience needs to benefit from understanding the lyrics that were also being sung, right? But the last song is definitely one that is more of a prayer around the music being a need for help and a place of safety and peace. But the first one, Mr. Lawyer, what a cheeky guy. But for the individuals in the room who couldn't understand, it's really a song about a gentleman who's in pursuit of a new love and he wants to chase her down and send her an SMS, buy her a PS. But he's asking a doctor and someone to help him to take some medication to avoid the anxiety, to be able to approach the girl. But on that note, I just thought I should do that. But more than anything, to celebrate the phenomenal talent that we have working in collaboration. Can you say something? And maybe for our phenomenal lawyer, next time you see him and you say, counsel, will you please draft? And you ask him to help draft, I think we'll all have a better appreciation for his art and his work. But if you could give us just some background, who your colleagues are, some background into Mvemnyama, so that we all understand, you never know. But we're in a world of entrepreneurship, working in collaboration and partnership. Tell us more about you, the group, and everyone else who's working with you.
Okay, good morning, colleagues. Thank you very much for...
Oh, did you see how we switched up? Good morning, colleagues.
Of course, I was very nervous that, Mr. Gladwin, yeah, this is me. After hours. Yeah, so Mnyama is a persona that I established after law school. I went to pursue music, and these colleagues, I met them at music school at Wits University. Yeah, so since then, whilst we doing practice, there's also this practice of art.
Got you.
that
And their
one
names?
does. Pumelelo Roberts on drums.
Mpumelelo, dush, dush, dush. Give us something. Boom!
Sbonelo Manzini on bass guitar.
Yay. Oh.
Sbonelo is actually a science and maths teacher by profession.
Oh, wow.
Thank God schools are closed and he's here at 9 o'clock.
Austin, can you help us out? Do we switch it on? Okay, we'll come back in a moment. On the sax.
On saxophone is Banele Nkosi. And on keys is Katleho Mullo.
Fantastic.
So yeah, we perform in and around Johannesburg, and tomorrow we have a gig in Bramfontein at the Forge.
And he's an
starts at 2 p.m.
entrepreneur, right? Selling himself. Go ahead. Where
Yeah.
in Bramfontein?
At the Forge.
Ticket prices? Time?
It's actually by RSVP, so you can RSVP. So yeah,
Fantastic.
feel free to come. Thank you very much.
Isn't that amazing? Okay, I've eaten up into your time, but we just couldn't let the moment slip away. Just couldn't. We're going to have our tea break now for about 10 minutes, so it is 11:41 now. We will be back in the room by 11:50. Please feel free to make use of the restrooms, have some refreshments, network, bring your refreshments back into the room with you so that we can continue with the remainder of the program at 11:50. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy your tea break. Alrighty, I'm presuming everybody's back at their tables. We've got our cups of coffee and tea in our hand, and we've had more than enough time to network and interact. Would that be correct? Would that be correct? Would that be correct? There we go. Okay, now I know you're with me in the building. We're taking a few pictures, getting a few snapshots, making sure that we've interacted with some of our peers, asking a few more questions. But for anyone who might be able to hear my voice but is still outside the room, please feel free to make your way back in. We'd like to commence with the second half of the program. And to all of you who have come back, thank you. We know that you've made time to join us, and we want to ensure that we offer you full value in terms of the conversations that we'll have so far. Just gauging, any of you had the opportunity to make it across the room to actually view some of the investees and their products? Yes? Impressed? There you go. Okay, fantastic. It's just that you're chewing. We'd bring a mic to you right now, actually, to give us feedback. But that's what we want. We want to encourage you as well throughout the course of the day, and specifically at the end of today's program, to interact with the investees. Hear their stories. Understand what new product innovations that they are developing, whether they may be in construction, maybe even in the beauty industry, where they use technology as an enabler to personalize foundational items, or foundation as a personal makeup item. There's a number of these entrepreneurs in the room, so please do interact with them, including the veterans. I understand they call you the fossils, the OGs, who've been in the game since back in 2017 and 2007. So to the likes of Susie and many more of you who are actually more senior, have walked the journey, we will be coming to you to get some of your feedback as well during the panel discussions, just to solicit how best it is that we improve on this environment that is doing good, but can get better. But ultimately, we want to make it great. On that note, we're now going to shift gears to hear from someone who sits at the helm of leading the strategy and, of course, the organizational purpose of E-Squared. Many of you are very familiar with him here in the room, so much so that you've interacted with him, shared your ideas, and even performed musically in front of him. Some call him boss man, but perhaps today he's the gentleman who's going to paint a clearer picture, not only into the report, but following which we'll have a panel discussion with his peers as well at E-Squared to really deep dive into the facts, the figures, but most importantly, amplifying how best it is that we leverage the partnerships that currently exist in the room, but also opportunities that might exist outside of our ambit at the moment. We've been doing it all morning, and I'm going to ask you to keep the momentum and do it again. To the fellows, you brought the energy this morning, so you're going to keep that up for us. And of course, ensuring that we acknowledge the various speakers who will be coming up on stage today. Ladies and gentlemen, please warmly welcome to the front of the stage the CEO of E-Squared with a round of applause. Confident and of course sharing in the energy and participation that he'll bring on stage today, Mr. Gladwin Liu. A warm round of applause.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I asked them to give me a mic so I can walk around. I think I'd get too nervous if I just stood in one place. I'm so happy to see everybody here, and I think the reason why we put on this event is exactly what I'm hoping is happening, is that we have entrepreneurs talking to each other, entrepreneurs talking to funders, funders talking to funders, and Nabila, to answer your question, how can we collaborate more as partners within the ecosystem? You'll hear me say a little bit later on that we believe that E-Squared is an ecosystem enabler rather than just another participant. And so what we've been doing a lot of this year is thinking about how do we scale our impact and how do we build enduring businesses as the mandate was set out. I want to say a few things. Firstly, the supermodels that you see on our impact report are actually sitting here in the room with you. So not only do we have musicians at E-Squared, we also have models, and so Tsidiso, who's one of our venture builders, he even went and they bought some Denje products so that he can get himself camera ready. It's amazing. Sive, I don't know where you are now, but now how do I look at you the same when you when you are telling me about a document you've drafted? And then I'd never heard Stevie sing. I heard that he could sing, and that's why it's like, Mr. G, this is me. I was like, okay. That's one. Nice one. Guys, thank you for the energy in the room. We're so grateful to have all of you here. To our partners, I saw Justice from TIA here. Justice, hi. Obviously, Claudia is going to be from SSM, that's going to be leading some of our conversations. Gugu, thank you for doing a phenomenal job around the work, around just leading us today. And thank you for coming all the way from Rwanda. You guys didn't know that I'm not making a joke. Anthony actually lives and operates out of Rwanda and leads our efforts in East Africa, throughout Africa. And so thank you for coming. I'm surprised you can walk. Anthony cycled around Burundi, and now you know what it's like to cycle up Everest. And so that's a true story. So can we give him a round of applause? What an amazing job. And to our partners from AGOF, Nonto and team, thank you guys for showing up so strong. The Alan Gray Orbis Foundation is actually the foundation. I don't know if it ever came to mind the way it is set out, the foundation. You're literally creating the foundation for what fellows will then participate in and that we could then benefit from. And so we're really grateful to have you in the room, and thank you for staying here a few extra days in Joburg. And Zim from AGGPSA, thank you so much. AGGPSA, which stands for Alan and Jill Gray Philanthropies, South Africa. So I'm not going to keep saying the full name, so AGGPSA. Zim, all the work that you're doing in the ecosystem. Thank you for being a champion for entrepreneurship, especially those in not popular provinces. So Zim and the team are doing some amazing work in the Eastern Cape and in Northern Cape, and so thank you for coming and joining us today. And then for the E-Squared board, apologies about yesterday. Some of us, that's also our motto, the sum of us. But so just so you can get, it's an inside joke. Some of us decided to watch the game yesterday, and then we had a board meeting. And I remember sitting and making a moral decision around, will I be tired in the board? Or will I do the responsible thing and just go to sleep? Bafana won, and so that's it was worth it. And so that's why the meeting in Lungile went so long yesterday. We were just all tired. I woke up after going to sleep to a message on the team WhatsApp group around, Mr. G, do we have to come to work today? To which I responded, yes, we're just all going to be very tired. And so, thank you guys for making it here today. I'm going to get into the presentation and stop speaking nonsense. So, if we think about what E-Squared was established to do, and Anthony spoke around about it, if you think about Alan Gray, the man, and what he set out to do, and it's so interesting to me. When I was at the Alan Gray 50-year anniversary a couple of years ago, the conversation was the fact that Mr. Gray thought about this in the 1980s, and the tax authority, and I could be getting this wrong, wouldn't allow him to do it back then. And so in 2005, when he establishes the foundation, then later, 2 years later, establishes E-Squared, it's the culmination of decades of thinking. And that's what we've tried to inculcate or to foster as in the work that we're doing at E-Squared at the moment, is thinking in decades. And Ant, you gave such an amazing analogy or visualization of how that comes to pass in the rubber trees. And it's so apt that we're having this conversation. Because that single conviction, speaking about the fact that, you know, we less than 1 in 10 1 in 10 rands is going to diverse teams, right? But also we know that there's a 90% failure rate in small business, right? But also, more importantly, we know that less than 10% of the tax-paying populace is supporting the rest of the country. And so that's why it's so important that we nurture these entrepreneurs that come across or come to our doors every day, the fellows that we have the privilege of administering the fund that's fellow-focused, is that we get to see these individuals that are going to create the businesses that are going to be the engines that drive the economy forward. And so if we look at what we have been able to achieve in the year, and Stefan, when I looked at your stat around the fact that it's about 13.5 billion rand that was deployed within the venture space. And if I look at how much we were able to deploy just last year, it's such an amazing thing that we've been able to play a role where we're deploying between 2.5% and 3% of the industry, which is really, really amazing. And so I don't want to... But more importantly, you spoke to exits, and so we've been able to achieve some partial exits, some returns, and it's so important that we see that. But what's very important about E-Squared that I think sets us apart in the way we're able to operate, not that we're better than any of the other funders, is that what makes our model different is the fact that we don't have limited partners or shareholders sitting waiting for returns, that any of the proceeds that we make go back to investing into the ecosystem, which is so amazing and a testament to what Mr. Gray set up so many years ago. Then we spoke around the jobs that were created, sustained, and beneficiated. But I think what's very important for me is the numbers around the portfolio. That last year we had an active portfolio of 77 businesses. We had 24 people, 24 new businesses onboarded, and that is also testament to the work that we're doing together with the foundation in the ideation, validation, and creation efforts, as well as startership in EA, is that more of those businesses or fellows are coming through the pipeline, and we're able to onboard a lot more. But also what we're trying to achieve with the Jasidi Talent Investor, where we're bringing a lot more people together that are fellows and non-fellows, that are high potential individuals that have the capability to create businesses, market creating innovations, that have the capability to then, from the launch phase, drive the economy forward and get more businesses launched and nurtured. And then also our efforts, and we have got some of our fund managers in the room. We've been able to deploy fund of funds. This was the idea we thought about in 2022. We worked with Thiru and the team from Emergent around how do we actually make that happen. And it's amazing to see how much we've been able to deploy, how much is in the pipeline, and that already through those efforts we've been able to touch 33 businesses through those efforts. Now, what's very important to understand, because you'll hear us speak a lot about the pre-seed program or SFP or pathways or social entrepreneurship or venture philanthropy, and you'll read about E2V and so on and so forth. And so I wanted to map it out on a continuum so you have an idea of what we're talking about when we say that we invest across the capital market stack, or across capital markets, and when we say we touch businesses from that very early stage, from that nascent stage, when Ed and I were talking about the fact when I met Ed from now Salah's Plug, but that back then was Renovate Mzansi, he shared with me just in the break that the revenue that they're doing now in a month was revenue that they did a whole year in 2024. And so it's just testament to the work that the venture builders are doing in helping create value and seeing businesses grow. So Ed, we're so proud of you, and I said that to you already, but it's just amazing to see the type of things that businesses are able to create as we support across the spectrum. The other thing that I wanted to chat about was E2V. So E2 Ventures and the investment team does everything from your seed businesses all the way through to your small cap private equity and then fund of funds. Now, what's interesting about that is the same team that reviews a bakery will review a multi-billion rand fund. Same team, and not different people. And so the amount of work that we've been able to do to deploy, to get deals done, is just testament to the hard work and the late nights. And so I want to salute you and thank you for that. The other thing that we need to talk about is the fact that same team also do co-investment, right? And so we've spoken a lot about what we've been trying to achieve, and the co-investment was a culmination of a thought around if less than 7% of funding is going to diverse teams and less than 2% is going to black women in the venture space, how can we play a role, not as another fund, but how can we play a role for real impact? So let's talk about the numbers behind what you're going to see in the report. So you'll see the final number around the fact that that the pre-seed investment team onboarded 16 new businesses and had 21 businesses progress through the different stages. And so the stages I put up before, just to refresh your memory, forgot. The pre-seed investment stage, if you think about it being concept, proof of concept, validation, monetization, and traction, what this team has been able to achieve consistently over the last couple of years is bring new businesses in through pathways and through startup founder pitch. And what's amazing about that is we are encouraging fellow businesses to fail fast. Come, try, iterate. If it doesn't work, come again. Because so many times we've seen examples of it's not the first business that you create, it would be the second or the third or the fourth. And this is why the pre-seed investment team is so important within E2, because it's where people are able to ideate and crystallize some of the ideas before they come into later stage funding. Then I also want to salute, and Alison, thank you for coming, their work that Endeavour does. In the last year, we have this Pathways program, but are we can we learn from the best in class? And Endeavour is best in class around developing entrepreneurs in the work that you do. And so together with Grindstone and Savant, we were able to bring 20 businesses within our portfolio and put them through your hands. And just the work that you guys have been able to do with some of our ventures has been amazing. So we just want to say thank you for partnering with us on that. And yeah, they do it. Please. And then Mash is in the room. Mash, do you have the 4-1 wine bottle? You don't have it? No, not today. Okay, cool. Mash is in the room. See her about 4-1 wine. Look on Uber Eats, on the amazing work that she's doing with Parlay and BrandPay. And this is like a serial entrepreneur. And last year, have I got it right? Were you on the Grindstone or the Endeavour program? Were you on the Endeavour program? So sorry, false advertising. Also, guys. Okay, cool. And what Parlay has been able to do, being on these programs, being within the Pathways program, but then, like I said, partnering with best-in-class accelerators, incubators, venture builders, allows us to then build on these businesses and like we say, help them move up the value curve. Now, what's important to note for us, I mentioned already, is that I had I don't know if Elijah's in the room. From Odenay, no, I don't see him. So one of the things, and Alice and I specifically made mention of the fact is, so one of our businesses in the back that's exhibiting is called Finta, and they've developed a board game that brought out the most competitive side of me that you've ever seen. We played in the office, and I'm not proud of the fact that when I was leading or had the most money, I kept shouting, "This is why the rich stay rich." It's such an amazing game, and seeing that iterate. And Elijah mentioned to me just in passing that if it wasn't for the Endeavour program and you your network introducing them into exclusive books, they wouldn't have been able to distribute as much as they have. And so now all of you, please go to exclusive books and get the Finta game. And so once again, that's the power of partnership and collaboration that we're talking about. Then E2V, later stage guys, the cool guys in the office. So E2V, just the sheer amount of work that E2V Ventures has been able to do over the last a couple of years. Once again, having Pierre and the team, late nights, early mornings. 163 businesses that were in the pipeline last year that were reviewed. 19 businesses that were actually presented at our IC. And so we have an IC every month, and every month we'll have like 4 businesses. And even if the businesses get pushed back, it's never a no. It's a, how can we iterate this to make it the best possible version of itself so that we can build these businesses. And one of the things that I really appreciate about our IC and or investment committee is the fact that, one, we actually hear from the entrepreneurs themselves when they're presenting their transactions. 2, that they really do have the best interests at heart of the transaction. And so therefore, like I said, it's not that it's never a no, it's a how do we make this the best form of itself, come back, iterate, these are some things that you could do better. And so 19 businesses were presented last year, and 17 were actually approved. So we've got a high success rate, and that just shows that there's an impetus, there's a drive to do more. Because we have the resource, and just because we don't have, like Longile said, the limited partners or the shareholders that are waiting for a return, doesn't mean that we can rest on our laurels. We have to be a high-performing team, and it's necessary for us to have more businesses in the ecosystem that are able to create those jobs, that are able to create economic or produce things that people are able to consume so we can keep the economy going. And we're doing that in partnership with some co-investors. 14 investments were paid away. There was some restructuring in that, and we're very proud of the fact that just through E2V Ventures, we're able to deploy around 248 million rand into these seed and growth stage businesses, as also fund of funds. Then it's important to note that it's the, Chilidzi likes to say it's the after the money, right? You've got the entrepreneur before the money and the entrepreneur after the money. And so the investment team write the promises and then the post-investment team need to deliver on those promises. And so we're really grateful that we've now capacitated our post-investment team, and we're very hands-on. We're trying to be a platform that when you become part of the E-Squared portfolio, that we are creating real value in the businesses that are in our portfolio. So I must admit, we haven't always gotten it right. We've been slow in releasing pavements. We haven't necessarily been always the best partners, but it's that drive to continue to iterate. It's that drive to continue to be better than we were before, to try new things, to innovate. And so we're really grateful that we've been able to grow that team so that we can provide a full service offering to our businesses post-investment. Then I wanted to draw Professor Peppers here. Yeah, in the back there. Oh, and there's Alex as well. Yeah, cool. So you can tell me if I've got anything is wrong. And just one of the things I've been so proud about, and Nonto, you know, the association has a lot to do with this, is what's been amazing is I went through our portfolio and I looked at an example of what this ecosystem can do, from a fellow that you find at university, that pitches at university, gets some grant funding, takes that idea and moves it on to, post in university, moves it on to pitching for additional funding to just keep the business going, develop that concept, validate that concept. It then takes that concept and raises, the pre-seed investment round. And got some grant money and just kept the business going. And then, like I said, not married to that specific problem, but going, how can we find a solution that will, one, reduce the cost of healthcare, reduce rejection rates, iterated different partnerships, and so Novita Biotech went to Altera, and we were this year able to close it down together with One Bio. And so what's amazing to me is that, like I said, what Mr. Gray envisioned and seeing that come through in what Alex and the team at Altera have been able to do is just amazing. And so we want to shine a light. And once again, Alison, another Endeavour entrepreneur, right? So Alex and Professor Pepper, we're so proud of what you guys have been able to achieve. And now on a global stage, I'm surprised to see Alex, because I think she was in the US talking to Global Pharma, as well as Giancarlo. You guys are sitting at the right table. And one of our co-investment transactions in Impulse Biomed. And I saw Audrey here as well. Yeah, Audrey, what you guys were able to do as a partner and a co-investor with the team from Impulse, and taking them across and getting them into that US market where we can raise bigger pools of capital, but also able to, let me not say offshore IP, apologies, that's a sensitive topic, but able to take our intellectual property into the world. Then as I close out, I want to just talk about the fact that inclusion is by design. And it started off at, like I said, at the foundation, where over 80% of the fellow populace is black, where over 50% are female. And that we see come through in the numbers that we're able to do. Surprisingly, we do less investments into female entrepreneurs, but more money. Right? So it just talks about the quality of female entrepreneurs, quality over quantity, and so not that the male entrepreneurs are not quality. Please don't get me wrong. But like you were saying, Lungile, when you opened the day, is that we've been intentional about targeting programs, about the work that we do to improve the SA economy, to make sure that our economy and the business world looks like the population that supports it. And then, talk a little bit about strategy and just looking forward. It's in the report. But when we set out this ambitious goal in 2022, talking about our 4 Cs, because we had 5 P problems, we came up with this strategy, and back then it was like this really ambitious thing. But so I'm so proud to say that when we said we were going to configure, we've got the reconfiguration of pathways that we're hoping to roll out in the next couple of years around how we can be better at nurturing and growing small businesses. We are not working just off Excel anymore, and so we're really proud of partnering with South African-owned, I don't know if it's UK-based technology partner in Vula, and how do we create a CRM and ERP for E-Squared. How do we consolidate what we have? How do we dig deeper into the knowledge base that we have and continue to build on the team? How do we catalyze the industry? And like I said, so proud that when we had the idea of doing fund of funds and co-investment, that we have been able to, at least we think we have been able to catalyze at least some activity within the ecosystem by partnering with the likes of SME Fund, together with, we've now invested in Hawaii, in Secha, so Brendan's here, and we're looking at a couple of other funds, and like I said, play across the private market space. And then collaborate. So Nabila, coming back to you. How do we collaborate? We're thinking about how do we catalyze by providing funding to, for instance, we've been talking to Edge about your venture debt fund. How do we collaborate with the likes of Endeavour and Savant and incubators, and now we're looking at that across the continent as well. How do we collaborate with the entrepreneurs in the room that are doing the good work? How do we back you with the finance, but also open up markets for you? And then, most importantly, how do we collaborate with other funders and co-investors to make capital available to those that need it most? And so, the statement I'd like to leave you with is, scale is not how we get there. Scale is how we get there, it's not why we exist. We've decided to scale our impact, not because it's cool, but because it's necessary. And so, why E-Squared is built. It's an entrepreneurial ecosystem enabler, maximizing impact through partnerships and products to build enduring businesses that meaningfully improve lives and drive social and economic growth. And so with that, thank you for listening to my monologue.
Well, Mr. G, we love your conversation so much that we're going to have you join us on stage for a panel discussion that we want to engage on in just a moment. And I am hoping that perhaps our colleagues from the technical team might be able to assist us just in removing the lectern, just to make it more possible for audience members to participate and view the conversation. On that note, Mr. G, I'm going to ask you if you could grab a seat on that end, please, sir. Whilst I introduce two of your colleagues on stage who are going to join us for a panel discussion and follow through with many of the themes that we've actually watched and, of course, heard from this particular report. Now, this will help us underscore some of the key numbers and insights that have been shared, but more so, engage them to understand more around the companies that have been profiled, like Parlay AI, a sommelier in your pocket, clearly, which was what was discussed, and, of course, getting more detail into how best it is that we continue with the growth and momentum that we're looking to establish. So on that note, there is a QR code on screen. I believe that this is for the report, for you to be able to download a copy if you don't have one already. There is a physical copy in front of you. However, you can download a copy of the report using the QR code. I'm going to take an opportunity now to introduce two of our panelists and speakers who will be joining us on stage. They too will be giving us some insight into the investment decisions that are made. How was this adopted? The practicalities behind the tools, and of course some insight in the report that we will pull through into some of the goals and objectives that we have for the year ahead. I'm going to introduce them both up on stage, familiar faces and names to you, and as I do, can we please give them a round of applause? They'll be joining me in the second and the third chair to my right-hand side. Please warmly welcome to the front of the stage the Chief Investment Officer at E-Squared Investments, Mr. Pierre Meong, who joins us to give us some insight. A warm round of applause to him, please. As we know, He hardly takes these decisions alone and has a team that also helps him in maintaining the growth, the journey, and trajectory of the companies that are invested in. Chilidzi Matlala joins us as Chief Portfolio Officer at E Squared Investments. Please give her a round of applause. Need help? Fantastic. Another round of applause, please, for our panelists. Pardon me whilst I move the furniture. It's just easier to maintain eye contact with our panelists as we remain in conversation. But I guess first things first, right? One thing that I think is important to note is just the level of support and the cheering and participation of the fellows who are here in the room. So if anything, I think on behalf of the fellows, it's important to note that your efforts, following through with your mandate, your ongoing commitment to supporting and helping entrepreneurs is certainly appreciated and valued by the audience members that I actually witnessed a moment ago, who have cheered and, of course, shared much of your contribution on the sidelines of the conversation. So perhaps the entrepreneurs, I heard the whistling there. Someone I made eye contact with in particular had shared some feedback. But first things first, as we know, we have the report in front of us. The chairperson has laid out and highlighted key insights that we've reflected on. And as we know, Gladwell has also given us some perspective on the depth of the numbers, the journey that we transition on. And I'd like to take this opportunity for us to engage in some of the questions that we'll discuss. And Chilidzi, perhaps I can start off with you. Just sharing some of your reflections, primarily when it does come to the investment journey. Right, ensuring that entrepreneurs are able to walk right through the pathway of from seed right through to the growth and E to V, which has been highlighted. I'm just keen to get your overview and perspective, firstly, on the growth, the efforts, and entrepreneurs that you've been able to work alongside with here that are present in the room.
So the question is?
Your reflections, general reflections on the growth that has been attained by some of the entrepreneurs that you have here present in the room that you've had the opportunity to work with.
Okay, so...
Mic is on?
Is it on?
It's on.
Okay. Well, firstly, I must say that it's been a privilege to work with these entrepreneurs, taking them, some of them all the way from the pre-seed stage and then to our more commercial portfolio, which is E Squared Ventures. And reflecting on the numbers as presented in the annual report, we've got, I think it's about 7 ventures that have progressed from our pre-seed portfolio, which is right now got about 36 ventures within it. Looking at that number, it looks and sounds low, right? But that is a function of 2 things. The first one is we've got to be disciplined in what we allow to progress into our commercial portfolio, right? To ensure and increase the likelihood of generating the returns that we need for E Squared to remain itself an enduring business, right? But it also presents an opportunity for us to relook at how we do the work that we're doing. And Gladwin spoke earlier to our investment readiness program, which is the partnership, the investment readiness partnership program where we worked with Endeavour, Grindstone and Savant to increase the scale of our operations, increase the number of ventures that come into our portfolio, but also improve the quality of the businesses to ensure that that number grows. And it's also what Gladwin spoke to earlier about us reviewing our Pathways program and redesigning it to improve, again, the number of ventures that come through as well as the quality of the ventures that end up in our commercial portfolio.
100%. That's an opportune time for us to also talk about not only the quality of ventures that come through, but also the intentionality with which you invest. It has been highlighted throughout this morning regarding the focus on Black-owned female businesses. Well, Black-owned, yes, female-led businesses. And primarily, one of the key indices that was also highlighted in the report is perhaps the disconnect that we see in terms of capital that's allocated. Significant, at 62%, but of course just shy of 30%, 27% that comes through in terms of deals that are generated. Many would actually question, well, how do we close that gap to make sure that when it comes to the intentionality we have, we see that translate and correlate a lot more closely?
Yeah, so One of the things that, I mean, Gladwin spoke about that statistic that 2% of funding goes towards, of all funding that's deployed goes towards women, right? So there's still quite a lot of work for us to do to increase that number. And one of the major contributors, in my view at least, to why that number is so low is because of who sits in the room where these decisions are made, right? The profile of the individuals that sit in the room where these decisions are made. And I'm proud to say that at E Squared, our investment committee is actually predominantly female, right? And I think it's not a coincidence that even though there's still work to be done, the number, the percentage of investments that we've made into female-owned businesses is much more significant than what is out there in the market. And that is because of the profile of the individuals that sit in the room at E Squared when the investment decisions are made. So for us, our work is not done. There's still a lot for us to do, but I think we have made the significant stride of ensuring that we get the right profile of individuals in the room.
What we will come back to is also understanding in future with the follow-up panel discussion is how Fund of Funds might open up that opportunity as well with greater reach. And perhaps a little later on as well during the course of today, we can hear some reflections from some of those female entrepreneurs who have been supported and walked the journey to share just some of their reflections as well. But thank you for your feedback. Pierre, I'd like to come to you as well to build up on a theme that the chairperson also noted in her opening address and even in the notes that will be shared in the report, which is essentially the clock. A deal clock and a transactional clock that's typically laid out when it comes to transacting and investing in entrepreneurs. What's been highlighted throughout the course of the day by various speakers, Anthony included, is that our capital is patient at E Squared. We'll hold your hand, we'll guide you and walk through the journey and ensure that we prioritize that growth. Many might presume that that makes it easy, but if anything, it actually calls for a heightened and increased level of discipline, governance, and of course, transparency to ensure that the rails are clear as to where we're headed. Help us, I guess, amplify this just to understand the heightened level of additional controls that are required to prioritize this.
Thank you for the question. Good afternoon, everyone. Absolute honor to be here. So in terms of answering that question, I want to open with saying that I agree wholeheartedly with our chair. That's not because she's our chair. And if you think about the type of capital that E Squared has versus your traditional fund, and you really zoom in on what that means, the work we do pre-investment is more or less the same. We look at the same things. We look for growth, we look for sustainability of the business, and we also look at return. However, where it differs is post-investment, and perhaps on the legals as well. Once we get into the investment stage, because we have a permanent capital vehicle, we actually have a greater responsibility, and it's actually a luxury to have the luxury of time. But in doing so, you also need to fulfill those milestones that ensure that you build an enduring business. And in a fund environment, you are building towards an exit, whereas what success looks like for E Squared is actually building towards catalyzing other funders to come in, and then staying the long haul in the business and making sure that we support the fellow or even others that we have co-invested with in order to make sure that there's sustainability, there's job creation, and overall impact in the long run.
Let's maybe unpack that theme again as well regarding collaboration, because it's been mentioned throughout the course of the day, and perhaps, Gladwin, this is where you can also add your voice. But Pierre, to start off with you, as a lead to the conversation we'll have later in the day, there are a number of other funders here in the room, and we're well aware that you've partnered with them before as well. Talk to us as to what further collaboration does look like, given that it is one of the C's, 4 C's and objectives that we have driving and leading the strategic direction of the business. What does, I guess, adequate collaboration look like? What are you open to? What has changed that we can continue to implement to help accelerate our progress?
Sure. So in terms of how we collaborate with other funders, initially, we looked at the ecosystem, and this is in the report as well, on how much funding goes to representative founding groups, and it's under 2% historically. And then we looked in the ecosystem for funders who were aligned in terms of what they wanted to achieve and see happen. And then we reached out to those funders to say, can we partner, can we work together to build businesses in the ecosystem? And what's come of that is we've got 3 businesses in the portfolio with representative founding groups who are at various stages of investment. But what we found is that because we've had the conversations up front and stated our intentionality, the partnerships got richer that way. So the discussions at a board level, discussions at a shareholder level are better aligned. And, you know, we play open cards with our partners. We tell them exactly what we're looking for, what we can and can't do.
And this is important, right? Because typically with E Squared, you'd actually invest in the Alan Gray Orbis Fellows, right? And who come out of that program. So there does still need to be a maintenance of the alignment in terms of the values there.
Yes. So the key for us is mission alignment. You're quite correct. So representation, job creation, impact. And our co-investors are aligned with us in that as well. They want to see that. And of course, the commercial returns is something that they look for. But it's something that we are happy to help drive for as long as the impact part is covered.
100%. Gladwin, I'm happy for you just to elevate the theme even further, because outside of just the report, which we know is critical for today, we do want to ensure that when we return in a year's time, in 2030, those trees and the branches have actually laid about a foundation of shadows that future generations can sit on. Your perspective?
Yeah, so there's a few things that we're looking to do when we collaborate, right? So if you think about even back in 2007, and Stefan made a reference to the GEM report, right? I remember reading the GEM report in university. I'm not going to say when, but when I remember in university. And the three biggest impediments to entrepreneurship was education and training, access to finance, and access to markets, right? And so if you think about it, fast forward, those are still the three biggest impediments to entrepreneurship activity. And so what we have within the Alan and Jill Gray philanthropies ecosystem is we are we are creating capacity and imparting entrepreneurial knowledge into, whether it be through the foundation or the work that Zim's doing in, you know, Funda Wande, Jake's Harrell Fellowship, all the education elements that we have within the group, right? So that's the instilling and getting more people to become, improving the individual and making sure that they can become economically active. So that's part. Then there's a second element then around access to finance, which we already take care of. So we've got access to a resource that was made available to us, and it's our responsibility to make sure that the money doesn't just sit earning interest, but it's deployed to the parts of the economy that really need it. Now, then the part that I want to talk to or focus in on is that collaboration, because the money's there, we've got the funders in the room, but it's that access to markets, right? It's the using the networks of the individuals in the room, and that's why co-investment is so important, or collaboration is so important, is that we can use each other's networks to give entrepreneurs access. The team from Memeza shared with us that if it wasn't for the collab that we had last year, which is coming together of social entrepreneurs within our portfolio, and we bring funders together as well. And last year it was in Cape Town at the waterfront, and when we did that, we had the IDC in the room, and if it wasn't for that event, they never would have received the investment that they got from IDC. And so how we spoke to Alison and Elijah, and you know, I can talk to so many others in the room around. We're talking to I see Matt from Nucleus, and we're talking about how we can introduce, for instance, Nucleus into Pargo, that's now 3 Capital Ventures portfolio, or we can introduce Nucleus into, what's the entrepreneur, Iviwe, and the team from Eagle Eye, and how would we be more intentional around doing not just funder or ecosystem partner to entrepreneur, but how are we doing more entrepreneur to entrepreneur collaboration and integration to see how we can do intra-portfolio work.
Got you. I think that's so important, and it's actually so refreshing to see a CEO remember the names of the entrepreneurs that he's worked with, which tells us clearly that as a company, all of you are truly invested in the development of the entrepreneurs that you work with and interact with. I do want to take this opportunity as one, to take the liberty of also referring to some of the entrepreneurs who have been in the program from its inception and have actually journeyed through the pipeline that Chilidzi did describe for us, understanding that they made their way through pathways and of course are now at E2V. And Sandra is one of them that I'd spoken to earlier on today, who gave me some perspective around her journey, described herself as one of the fossils in the room. But more than anything, maybe we will come to you for your feedback here, Sandra, in just a moment and open up to questions. Susie, I beg your pardon, Susie. Apologies about that, Susie. I beg your pardon, I met her this morning, but thank you for the correction.
That's okay.
Susie, and why I asked this and I mentioned this is because for myself as an outsider coming in to understand the ecosystem and the landscape, it does tell us that there's a form of trust and a relationship that is established over the long term, but also an expectation and a responsibility on more mature entrepreneurs to also pay it forward to the younger ones. So perhaps this is an opportunity for any one of you here on the panel who might be open to the question. If you could just share your reflections on the importance of the big brother or big sister support that can typically be provided by those who have gone through the growth phase or currently in it, and the support that they can provide to those who are in seed, pre-seed investment, to kind of work their way and their mettle to have that resilience as an entrepreneur. Open to anyone on the panel.
Maybe I'll kick it off.
Sure.
So when you talk to, like, for instance, what Susie's been able to do in growing Nafasi, and then I don't know if everybody's aware, but that was a management buyout. So Susie was working at Avenge at the time. It was Avenge Water, had the foresight around how she could create value and build this business. And so backed by E-Squared, not without its challenges. I'm sure Susie will share with you.
But that's important to note, right? Because it's not always rain and sun, all sunshine.
Yeah. So not without its challenges, and was then able to buy Nafasi out, then stabilize, buy Avenge Water out, stabilize, rebrand Nafasi, stabilize the business, and now seeing growth. And then we were super proud that it was announced at the beginning of the year around Susie has been able to drive that business to where we've raised, Susie and the team have been able to raise a round from Norfund. And so you've got the Norwegian government investing into a South African business for that growth and the sustainability vision that they're driving. And so what's amazing about that story is, it was many years of back and forth, whether it be in the boardroom or requiring additional capital or not being as responsive as we could be. And we see the culmination of that now in Nafasi being able to raise a bigger round of funding. But it's in that back and forth, it's in that iteration, it's in that hard conversations that you see how through adversity, you really are seeing businesses flourish. And sometimes the adversity shouldn't come from the funder. But like I said, through it all, the business has been able to go and raise a bigger round of funding. We've got multiple examples of that. I spoke about Alex and Professor Pepper and the team going from Novita. Alex will tell you about how the partner issue and how it's difficult to sometimes, relate and stay with the same partnership team and then move over and develop the IP that they are with now in Altera, when previously was Novita, and I can name multiple other businesses that have gone through that same process. And so, coming back to your question, I know I went off flying on a tangent here, but coming back to your question, it's so important that we understand that it's not an easy path. E-Squared is patient, but we are meant to be an enduring business. So we are, one of the things that, we're an impact investor, so people generally make the assumption that we're not profit-seeking or commercial in nature. We are. Mm-hmm. We are looking to invest so that the returns can invest into future fellows and can invest into future fellows. And so that, like Ant made the analogy, that the trees that we sit under, or the trees that we plant today, none of us actually get the opportunity to sit under.
100%. And I'm glad that you've been able to edify and add more detail to it, because it does underscore the reality of the journey that is involved. Of course, the clarity on the mandate that does still remain. And of course, understanding how we do need to be agile and adapt to the changing demands and requirements that might occur. But the mandate does remain the same for us to ensure that we continue to empower many more entrepreneurs and pay it forward. I am aware that there are more questions that might come from the audience, and I don't want it to eat up into too much time. But any questions from the floor, we're more than happy to take your questions, your feedback, primarily from some of the peers and other funders in the room, because I think this is where the opportunity to continue to collaborate and zone in and speak to the following conversation and panel discussion of Fund of Funds does provide us with an opportunity to extrapolate more value into what partnership looks like. Any questions from the floor? Oh, is it the lunchtime slump? Oh boy. Okay, I'll tell you what. If there are any questions, please do raise your hands. We've got about 5 minutes to get them in before we get our concluding remarks. Wonderful, a hand is up. And I was also going to make reference to a question that was made by Ms. Mkhize earlier on, but we'll come back to that in just a moment. The point that I'd like to raise there is one that she highlighted regarding impact. It's, as you mentioned, scale is not necessarily the destination or how we'll get there, but is a key area of focus. So perhaps as we do get our second question, I just want us to ponder on that theme as to how it is that we enlarge, enlighten, and further build on the focus that she highlighted, being the fact that we're not fully getting the full, clear picture of impact that can be made on the ground, specifically in the area of science and innovation, which is what she had alluded to. So keen for us to come back to that in just a moment, if we can, for Ms. Mthethwa. Please go ahead with your question again, ma'am, from Edge Growth.
Sorry, guys, I feel like the teacher's pet now, having to ask any questions. But something that I'm really interested in, and as a funder, we obviously partner on different funding opportunities in the space. For us, the recurring theme or challenge has been investment readiness. 1 out of 100 applications that we get is funded, the rest are not investment ready. As a funder, you don't have the time or the resources to help with investment readiness. And if you're lucky, you have incubation interventions that can do that as part of your offering. But I'd like to get your sense on, I've read in the report that you have a focus on investment readiness, particularly within pre-seed. But in the early growth stage, that's also a recurring problem for us. What have you seen? Is that the case for you guys? And then how do you help an entrepreneur who has a good business, is a good jockey, but there's investment readiness issues, that they don't have the time or the resources to solve themselves? So, yeah, just any thoughts on that?
Do you want to?
Yep.
I feel like that's for me. So absolutely, investment readiness is one of the greatest challenges we see, particularly in the earlier stage companies. So we've got a few very good examples in our portfolio at the moment where we've actually gone in there as the E2V team, which is separate from the Pathways team. And we found that investment readiness wasn't quite where we thought it would be. But given how we operate as E2, we co-solution with fellows and with the Pathways team as well to come to a point where investment readiness is actually there. And how we do that is we go in there, look at the problem, and then get external help. Say it's on financial, we get external help. It's on occupational health and safety, we get external help as well. But we also then take the time to actually deep dive into what investment readiness looks like. And if I could just quickly do that here, it's more than just financials, it's more than just operations. If you think about a funding round and a fundraise as a business or as a founder or as an entrepreneur, it's actually a somewhat of a beauty contest, if I can say. You've got to make sure that you have your ducks in a row. You've got to make sure that you look attractive to potential investors. And how you get there is definitely on the numbers, but also understanding your business model. But in understanding your business model, you need to understand your financial model, because your financial model determines what levers you can pull as a business to then give the forecast and give the right forecast. And then in addition to that, what every funder loves to see is a well-populated data room. So if we can get that data room up and running for you with a nice spine and an index, I see my team is laughing because they understand the pain. And if a funder can go into a data room via a link and click on a folder that says financials and all the financials are there, wonderful. But if they click on that folder that says financials and there's a business plan in there, there's a growth strategy in there, and everything's a bit all over the place, that's a problem. So those are the things that we try and solve. So that might take longer, but fortunately we have the luxury of time. However, it's something that we'd like to solve right at the beginning as opposed to further down the line in order to pull and catalyze and pull other investors into an investment opportunity or a portfolio company.
Gotcha.
Can I also just mention that we obviously have the privilege of, like I said, our funding is not, we're investing off our own balance sheet. And so we can be more patient than other funders. And so, Dumisho, can you wave, please? Where's Dumisho? Dumisho heads up our pre-seed investment program, and Nabila, I'd appreciate if you can chat to her, because what the team have been able to do there is, one, we have what we call our venture builders, which is the E2 staff that are meant to be your sounding board as for the entrepreneurs. And like you said, we have got a portfolio of 36 and 3 individuals. And so that's why the partners that we've spoken about in the room are so important. But then Pierre mentioned something that's so important as well, is that in that investment readiness process, we have a milestone-based funding program in the form of pathways where we say, you are now at your concept stage. Let's get you to your proof of concept stage. And what does it take to get you there? Now that you're proof of concept, how can we get you to validation phase? And how can we get you to monetization, so on and so forth. And then together with our pre-seed IC, we can set milestones that we believe are important for the entrepreneur to achieve, which are not always financial. It's go and get the conversation with your first customer, do some market research, prove out that people actually want to buy your product, and then incubate basically incubate and then accelerate that idea through the process. So we are privileged in order to be able to take that longer term approach with entrepreneurs.
100%. Happy to gauge if there's any questions on the floor. We're happy to take one more before we get our parting shot from our panelists. Oh, are we all nervous? Or does it mean our questions have been responded and answered to? Okay, I'm seeing some heads nodding in the background, so that's a good point. Is there a hand I missed? Oh, because of the light. Go ahead, please go ahead with your question, sir.
Sorry, I was next to the mic. I thought I'd swing my shot.
Oh, no, let's go ahead. Please introduce yourself, sir.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matthew Marsden from Startup Club ZA. eSquared has been a fantastic partner to us in our ecosystem building work for 3 years now, so we're obviously very grateful and understand what catalytic interventions can do. So thank you so much, team. Of course, a privilege to be here. I think one of the questions I would love to ask from you as the leadership team, some of us who are more, we're not funders ourselves. We are really attacking ecosystem building as private companies and trying to fill gaps that we identify. We have found typically that the ecosystem gathering, eventing, brand building side of things, understanding access and opportunity, that's been the real thing that Startup Club has tried to attack. I'm quite curious from your perspective, what would you say are some gaps in the eSquared proposition right now? What are the biggest barriers to impact that you are finding, given that most people in the room here are going to be partners to you, either as funders or advisors, and you're trying to create this incredible continuum? What are some gaps that you've identified that you think you need help with, where private industry can insert themselves and ultimately enhance impact collectively for the good of the ecosystem? That's my question.
Thanks for your question, Matthew.
Do you want me to go first? Okay, cool. Because I know exactly. So there's one pet peeve that I have in the eSquared portfolios that we are Gauteng and Cape Town predominant. I want to do more investment in Limpopo, in Mount Elif in the Eastern Cape. I want to be on the ground where people need us most. And so once again, we have the capability with social entrepreneurship to go into those spaces and to be catalytic and to do pilot programs in those spaces. But if you ask me today, what do I want to do? I spoke to Zim last night around, like I said, the work that they're doing in the Eastern Cape and now in the Northern Cape, is how do we get our interventions to those entrepreneurs? Because if I look at my portfolio and it's just those two dots and maybe one in KZN, like that is so important to us. So if you have access to markets, access to entrepreneurs and partners in those spaces, speak to them, but that's what I'm most interested in next.
Solid response. Chilita, did you want to reply?
I was going to say something similar. So.
Okay, got you. And I think important as you highlight that, right, because it does speak to Stefan's presentation and, of course, expanding on the reality of the landscape. I'm cognizant of time and perhaps want to give each of you, 30 seconds for your quick-fire responses that really do speak to much of the themes that have come through. We understand the goal. We understand 10 million lives is still the target. We're clear on how we're going to get there. And, of course, we are well prepared for any headwinds, apprehensions, or challenges that we might face from the external environment. But outside of that, there's a commitment that we can make. And it's quite clear that we are looking to build on these themes. They are partners, they are fellows, they are funders, they're members of their media, they are colleagues and individuals who are key to supporting this particular mandate. Chilitsi, as a portfolio manager and someone who helps these companies journey along, the one commitment that you can make, not just in your personal capacity, but with industry partners to ensure that journeys post-investment do drive a lot more success and, I guess, a reduction in the failure rates that we might see, not just for E-Squared, but in other investments that might take place working with your partners. Your parting shot?
My parting shot. So I always like to make this analogy to say that it takes a village to raise a unicorn, right? So I think it's important for us at E-Squared, and even in the way that we do our work, to ensure that we put the right partners around our ventures to ensure that they're able to achieve their objectives, right? Whether it's co-funders, whether it's partners that help us with access to markets or any of that kind of thing. But ultimately, staying true to what Dr. Alan Gray, when he was thinking about E-Squared, when he said, when he introduced the ethos of responsible entrepreneurship, ensuring that when you do your work as an entrepreneur, you look at it through the lens of benefiting the many versus just the one.
100%. Pierre, your parting shot, tough mandate, but one that I guess the market has also come to accept and understand and most importantly be aligned on. The balance of responsibility, but still ensuring that these are businesses that are commercially viable and of course can be partnered on. Your parting shot to ensure that that doesn't just become the exception, but rather the norm in creating shared value when it comes to building businesses in South Africa.
You know, I'm so glad you said that. I was going to say the exact same thing, more or less. So 2020.
Need an intern?
If you look at 2025 and you contrast the impact report for 2025 versus 24 and 23, you can see that there's a marked improvement in activity and what we've been able to do. And I think that, and my team's staring at me now, but I think that that's the standard. It's not the exception. And we need to be responsible stewards of capital and continue doing the good work that we do to the points that Chilisi just highlighted.
100%. Mr. G, your parting shot as we close off with, and I perhaps want to continue to underscore it on collaboration, 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 as that's been the key mandate you've shared this morning.
I think we're going to continue to innovate. We're going to continue to try new things within the market. We're going to continue to bring people into some of our crazy ideas. But yeah, we're going to continue to innovate.
Got you. So for those who have questions, more calls, the desire to partner, and most importantly, even challenge, what might be the status quo and advance on it, I guess the door is open. Senior executive leadership at E-Squared is available and, of course, remains open to ongoing engagement to participate. It's been amazing speaking to all three of you. Thank you for the ongoing work and efforts that you do, and, of course, joining us for this panel discussion with your team staring you down as well, Pierre. But thank you so much. Please give my panelists a round of applause as they make their way off stage. Gladwin, Pierre, and Chilisi, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you very much to the team at E-Squared giving us their insight. And of course, the conversation doesn't end there. We know that there's never enough time to get to the depth of the information that you'd like, but this is why these kind of events take place, for you to meet the team, interact with them, ask them your questions, probe, and of course build on the networks and partnerships that we have. So the conversations will continue even after today, which is why these outcomes do need to be conversations of consequence. We're going to get your energy up now because the next conversation is one that has been building up over time and is indicative of the fact that once you start with key themes to actually build up on the impact we'd like to have, this is where we do see positive outcomes and results. If you take a look at the report, you would have seen the chairperson also highlighting the growth and increased opportunities and investment that has been made in 2025 through Fund of Funds. And this morning, we're going to further reflect on just the support, the efforts, and of course, the importance of the partnership, because this speaks to that multiplier effect. So at the next time that we're here, we're not just meeting in Johannesburg or Cape Town, but that we might be in Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, in the Eastern Cape, and who knows, also making our way to Rwanda. But to give us some insight into this panel discussion, it will be moderated by a leader within the space of creating, crafting support, and of course championing the efforts of entrepreneurs in South Africa, specifically for small and medium-sized businesses. Ms. Claudia Manning, who's going to join us as the moderator. She is representing the SA SME Fund, following which she will be joined by three panelists who will be joining her on stage. Mitchin Adams of Aon Ventures, Brendan Mullen of Secha Capital, and Rory Ord of 27-4. Please give all our panelists, including the moderator, a warm round of applause as they make their way up. Oh. Come on, thank you. Good to see you. Have you got moves? Have fun.
Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? Great. So I've got an unenviable task. I'm standing between you guys and lunch, and I have 3 guys here who talk an enormous amount. So my request to them is to speak less and to speak at double the pace at which they normally speak. And so we can hopefully get this done in less than half an hour, which is what Gugu told us we need to do. Okay, so I'm Claudia Manning. I'm at the SA SME Fund. We are a fund of funds, and we work in the venture capital economy. And to this audience, I don't think I need to spend any time explaining why we think venture capital is important. Globally and in South Africa, the fraction of businesses that get venture capital funding is tiny. And yet the disproportionate impact that they have on growth and particularly on innovation is just extraordinary. And many of the fellows in this room, the businesses here, are in fact testament to that. So today we're going to talk about the fund of funds strategy, which basically is what we are, a fund of funds. Instead of allocating capital directly to startups, we allocate to fund managers in order to amplify the impact. And so that's what the discussion is about. So the SSME Fund has 15 managers that we've backed over the last sort of 9 years into, I think we're around 23rd fund that we've allocated to. And we have a portfolio of something like 200 businesses within the SSME Fund. Had we, a team of 6 professionals, tried to do this, it would have taken us many years and a lot of money to be able to actually reach that scale of business. Whereas if we work with fund managers who are experienced and who have built up a track record, we believe that we can get the impact going. I'm joined by 3 colleagues who we work closely with, I'm very happy to say. One of whom, Mitch, is a former founder of a business, Ozo, many of you know it, and is now a first-time fund manager. Actually, no, second-time fund manager. Brendan Mullen is with Secha Capital, a fund manager that has also in their second fund. And Rory is with 27-4, which is both a fund of funds allocator as well as a fund manager of a VC fund. So Rory, I'm going to start off with you by just saying, tell us what does a high impact fund of funds strategy actually look like? Balancing returns, diversification, and impact. Talk us through the 27-4 approach.
Sure, thanks, Claudia. Hi, everyone. I think that the great advantage of a fund-of-fund approach is just the amplification of whatever your strategy is, that you're able to leverage an existing infrastructure that is out in the market. You can work with people who have already kind of established a thesis in a particular area of the market, have established teams, have established processes around approaching whichever part of the market that they're in. And so applying money kind of through a fund-of-fund structure can allow you to reach a lot more businesses quickly, and also at kind of different levels. We heard a lot from Gladwin about kind of the investing throughout the different ecosystem. That sort of thing is also possible through a fund of funds, or you can target certain areas of the market. I think when I think about the question around the impactful side of things, we've been quite fortunate at 27-4 to partner with government through our fund of funds structures, the Black Business Growth Fund. And the way that we've done that is really to partner to create jobs and to push transformation within the private markets investment arena. So that means in practice we've backed 10 different black-run private equity funds through the mid-sized business space, so mid-market space. And I was thinking about this, during hearing the comments from Gladwin, looking to do more in different places in the country, because through this strategy, we've actually managed to invest in businesses that operate through all 9 provinces of South Africa. And because our partnership with government is with the Jobs Fund, we had a very clear objective around job creation and auditable job creation. So we know from that we've actually created jobs across all the provinces of the country, thousands of jobs across all the country. Thank you. But I think to the question, what does it really mean to create a fund of funds for impact? I think we're in the position where we have to create both impact and returns. There's no two ways about it. We pay government capital that we position as first loss capital, and we pay that with fully commercial pension fund capital that comes from everyday people's retirement pots. And we need to make sure that we're delivering on those different mandates. So the thing from a design point of view is to make sure that we keep that as simple as possible. Try to bring in as little complication as possible. So from an impact point of view, I'd say anyone who's trying to put together fund of funds, try to keep the kind of your North Stars of impact as tight as possible. And then, in designing the impact strategy, bring those things as closely together as possible. My last point here, I'm speaking quickly. My last point is to try, as you, the way that a fund of fund approach works, especially from an impact point of view, is that you need to draw a through line of what you want to report to your end investor, the thing you need to achieve. You need to draw that line all the way through to the investee company. And Brendan knows this because he's one of the fund managers in our portfolio. That we have to contract. So when we contract from our fund of funds vehicle, we've got a contract with the individual fund managers around the dates that we're ultimately going to receive from their companies. So we put the obligation onto the fund manager that they need to go and source that data from the companies. What we don't want is that to be a disadvantage for the Setchers of the world in going to those portfolio companies. We don't want to, when it's hard enough to run a business anyway, you don't want to have them running around for extra things. So we try to keep it as simple as possible so that we can prove, the outcomes we're trying to get without trying to put too much extra onto that process.
That leads me perfectly to the next question, which is for you, Brendan. Ultimately, a fund of funds' success rests on the managers that they back. If we back terrible managers, everything will go south from there. So tell us, in your opinion, having now managed 2 funds, what does a top performing manager look like today?
Great, thank you, Claudia. Nice to be here, nice to see everyone. There's actually a couple of Setcha alumni in the audience, so that's very exciting. And Rashil and Nambuso, my 2 co-founders, wish they could be here, but Rashil is doing reporting, and Nambuso is at a site visit, which kind of leads into the answer to this question. So I think I can answer that with 3 words. It's collinearity, being a fiduciary, and then additionality. So collinearity, what do we mean by that? Every business we back, by virtue of its growth, must achieve positive financial metrics, and its impact must grow with that growth. So that makes it easier to then care about the impact and the reporting and to make sure that it's always top of mind. Because revenue growth, margin growth will directly lead to impact with the end consumer, the customer, more jobs, carbon abatement, whatever it may be. So collinearity really drives what we do. Fiduciary is, you have to respect that you are managing money on behalf of a fund to fund and the money before that. And that comes with it, obligations, whether it be reporting or being a good fiduciary and realizing that impact alone is not sufficient and financial returns alone is not sufficient. And then additionality. One of the themes throughout this event is that a lot of the capital flows to the same areas, and there's almost a mob mentality or a group think. And that's not going to create additionality, which is impact that otherwise wouldn't occur without that fund. So it's such a, what we're always trying to do is find undiscovered, maybe misunderstood value, and then via our operator investor model, where we second somebody into the portfolio company, to create faster growth, new initiatives, or de-risk the downside. And that's ultimately what we think being a good fund manager is here.
Great. There was a study recently done by the World Economic Forum that was really interesting about venture capital globally. And what they found is that the regions that create the most impactful and successful venture capital companies are not just ones where there's deep capital pools, but where there's an ecosystem that supports that. So strong universities producing talent, governments that are supportive, good managers, good strong founders who exit and reinvest, etc. And you know, Stefan's report earlier on talked about how far we've come, but clearly there's still lots of room for growth in terms of developing our ecosystem. So Mitch, moving on to you, your observations on beyond deploying capital, how fund of funds, what we need to be doing to help to shape the ecosystem to create a more enabling environment for founders and for fund managers, particularly emerging fund managers.
I think you used the magic word, which is ecosystem. If fund managers themselves had to go out and get money, they would struggle quite a bit, because you have to go to the guys that have the money, which are usually high net worth individuals or institutions. If it's high net worth individuals, you spend possibly years trying to get to a close, and institutions really need a strong track record, which then leaves the ego space as those that already have are the ones that can only fund businesses and make more money from that. In a country like South Africa, where we want to see transformation happen, you need emerging fund managers coming through, and historically they're not going to have anything. And so how do you actually support them? How do you ensure that they also follow standards, governance, all of that? Otherwise, if you leave it to their own standards, they'll do whatever they want. You look at founders and what they expect from funds as well. It's going to be all over the spectrum. There won't be a standard and there won't be governance in place. So I think fund of funds, they essentially set that standard. They set up the governance standard of what they expect from fund managers, and that then gets passed on to the founders that they're investing into. That's number one. Number two, they also bridge the gap to get institutional funding, and so us as fund managers don't have to spend 2 years trying to get access to the funds. When you already have the pool of money, we just have to speak to you, manage one set of investors, and then you buffer in that for us as well. It also then helps us create the track record. You can also give us guidance. Even if you're not an emerging fund manager, you still need guidance. I think this space is not something that's press the button and just runs. It is constant, new, crazy stuff that you bump into, constant challenges, constant hurdles. And if you don't have somebody with experience, somebody that you can go to actually help you, you'll find yourself not actually sleeping. Something I saw from Pierre and Gladwin is like they're actually taking on some of the stresses of these businesses, and you can't do that. So where do you go when you need help? The founders are coming to you as a fund manager. Where do we go as fund managers? We can go to the fund of funds. So I think it's very important to have fund of funds in the eco space to actually help build that and accelerate it. Otherwise, you're just going to have the wild, wild west going on with regards to fund managers. Guys just going around, collecting money, losing money. Like you said, you want to back good fund managers. Otherwise, everybody will call themselves fund managers. I bump into many people that, I'm going to start a fund, I'm going to start a fund. I was one of those. And after I started it, I found out there's a lot more to this than what I expected. And the governance is intense. And it's good to be held to that standard, good to be held accountable so that we can actually do a good job and then keep this as a sustainable ecosystem that grows.
So I must just say that when Mitch and the SSME Fund first started speaking about raising Aeons' fund, we spent the first hour saying why it was such a terrible idea and he shouldn't do it. And we waited to see whether he was going to say, I think you're right, and actually this is bad, and I'm going back to doing whatever I was doing before, but luckily he didn't. So Rory, back to you. I mean, we hear this every time we're fundraising, which is that Fund of Funds creates a distance and an additional layer from the outcomes, from the impact. And so this issue of dilution of impact because of a fund of funds, which is now investing in a fund, and then only then are you investing into portfolio companies. How do you see this conundrum?
Yeah, so I think it's true. By design, I guess you're further from the portfolio company, but it kind of goes back to what I was saying in the first comments, that you just have so much more reach, and I think, like most things, it comes back to this idea of sort of the intentional design. Setting out what you're trying to achieve. If it's like anything, we know in our, for everyone around the room, we know we work in companies, we work in teams, and we know often it feels like the easiest thing to do is to do the thing yourself, because then you do it your way, you do it to the standard you want, you do it right. But we know that that's not actually how you get things done in the world. You get things done by letting people specialize, by sort of, I guess, by using teams, by kind of leveraging the resources that are out there. But it does come to design. If you don't design well from a fund of funds point of view, if you're not really clear with what you want in the beginning, then you're just kind of letting the process happen to you. And then then you can't blame anyone but yourself if you're not getting the impact that you wanted from the beginning. If you designed it in a way that you just kind of allocated, or you just, to Brendan's point, followed the crowd or whatever, then you're just going to kind of let things happen to you. If you can really kind of, I think what helped from our side in our design was that we came from a perspective of understanding the industry first, what was kind of possible from the industry, and then seeing, why are various structures in place, why are various rules and commercial terms and all those kind of things, and reporting structures, and kind of knowing how the kind of the value chain works. And then we thought, okay, let's see what we're trying to achieve from our various kind of impactful portfolios. And from a fund of funds point of view, that meant, okay, if we're trying to, job creation was our particular thing in our Black Business Growth Fund, then we could say, okay, what kind of investments historically have created jobs? And we knew that there weren't many funds that we could invest in from fund of fund perspective that would have that as their direct thing that they were trying to do. So we more went on the basis of, okay, what really creates jobs? And mostly it's just when businesses grow, they create jobs. That's kind of the easiest, that's the thing that kind of flows with the tide. And we always want to be in that place where the tide is pulling us along. You don't want to be against the tide. So we rather said, okay, what does the market tell us? It's that companies that already kind of have a foothold, that they're doing well in their sectors, they've got some sort of, they've already got established businesses, but they are not so large yet that they're already kind of tapped out on their growth in their particular markets. Those are the businesses that you put growth capital into those businesses, and they're gonna, you're very likely to create jobs, and that's exactly what's happened. So in our fund of funds portfolio, if we had invested directly, maybe we could have done sort of 10 deals. In our existing Black Business Growth Funds, we've got around 65 portfolio companies. Almost the job creation is very uniform. There are certain sectors that stand out, but where the companies succeed, they create jobs. It's that simple. And then, of course, the other thing that, the other impact outcome we're looking for is transformation. And it is much easier to drive transformation in a company that's growing and you're employing new people than it is in one that's static. Yeah.
Brendan, you've had experience scaling SMEs in South Africa and in the region. can you think of some examples of where capital fails to translate into impact? And what do we need to do to avoid that?
You know, capital fails to translate into impact when it goes to the wrong bottlenecks, when it is kind of misaligned with reality on the ground. And I think ultimately when it's capital alone and it's not part of an ecosystem. I mean, without a fund of funds, such a capital wouldn't exist, which without the fund funds of 27.4, SASME, E squared, and we wouldn't have been the first institutional capital in 9 different businesses that have created over 1,000 jobs in the last 2 years alone, and will continue to. And I think without, to me, the fund of funds are the oxygen for the impact. And too often I've seen, generally not with people in the room here, but I'd say more Pan-African headline, just a lot of headlines of large amounts of capital that doesn't actually get to where it's supposed to be, which is generally the SMEs or the SGBs, small growing businesses. So what we've seen is adding to the ecosystem, having LPs that have pattern recognition, that gives you that oxygen in the space to learn and improve, to be a better fiduciary, to believe in that collinearity. And then also, the SMEs, it's not capital alone. It's important and it's a prerequisite, but it's also being able to help the SMEs grow by sharing expertise, by helping them on strategic initiatives, helping them hire. So again, ecosystem is absolutely the theme of the day from my perspective.
Should we be doing more? I mean, we're not, Rory, you're a fund of funds, we're a fund of funds. We're capital allocators, and what's important in South Africa is that finally, I think the tide is turning. We're seeing institutional investors now recognizing the value of investing in this innovation economy. And so the amount of capital flowing into innovation, thankfully, is now on the rise, which is really great news. So we have an important role, as Mitch has said earlier on, in raising the capital and deploying it. Is there anything more we should be doing for the ecosystem? Anyone?
Okay, I'll jump in. Because I was speaking about emerging fund managers before. I know we follow this 2 and 20 model that is out there, and this is probably
I'm sorry I asked this question. I know what he's going to say.
I know it's a touchy subject, but things aren't sustainable. Like I said, if there's a well-established fund already that exists, somebody that already comes from capital, it's sustainable, it can run. But if we are trying to encourage emerging fund managers to come up, it's not sustainable. So I always say this is a man-made system. So we can always make something else, create something that is actually sustainable, that can work. There are very clever people in this room and in other rooms that I've spoken to that came up with great ideas. Let's move those conversations forward to actually change this model. I know the guys that back the fund of funds aren't happy with the 2% at all. So how do we even appease them, appease the fund of funds, appease the funders themselves, the fund managers, and then that also helps change the type of notes and instrument we use to invest into founders. So I don't know what the answer is there, I just think let's have the conversation.
Brendan, Rory?
Yeah, sure. I mean, starting with the structures, 2 and 20, 10-year, that should go, but what are you going to do? The misallocation of human capital, that's why, maybe on the positive, love the Alan Gray Fellows program. Such is hired from there, where instead of going to McKinsey or Bain, and I worked at Bain, you can redirect that high-powered human capital into small growing businesses. So we need more opportunities to do that. And thanks to the BIPAP program of SASME and TIA, there was a lot of opportunity to do that. So I think a lot of things that things that we can control. I'd love to have a 20-year fund, not a 10. We're doing. We just need to do more of it and make it more pronounced and concentrated, because now's the time. As Claudia often says, if we don't start showing returns and proper impact now, we're not going to get a second chance at this. So let's use this momentum to really make everybody succeed.
Yeah, I mean, if I think of the things that the different fund managers in the market ask of us, it's a lot of I'm sure you get the same thing, Claudia. It's a lot of soundboarding. A lot of people saying, you know, I've got this situation. What do others do in this situation? There's a lot of that. A lot of kind of advice around like legal terms. There's a lot, you know, a lot of fund setup type of things. A lot of team structuring comments. You know, how should I balance the team in terms of senior resource, junior? How much support staff do I need? Those sorts of things for newer fund managers. And of course, just the battles with fundraising. And then I think the other big thing is kind of on the investment side, we get asked a lot around like a lot of co-investment type of thing, which we do quite a bit of. And then, yeah, to a lesser extent, we do deal sourcing that we refer, depending on, you know, which fund managers in our portfolio we think are best placed for that. And sometimes that's needed more than in other cases. And, you know, so I guess the approach we take is to try to see, you know, what does each manager need and what are they, you know, we don't want to spend time trying to tell them things they already know, well, we hope we don't do that, Brendan. Yeah, so those are kind of the main areas just in sounding board, and we find that even the managers that are not in our fund of funds portfolio ask us quite a lot, and we're very happy to do that because we think the whole private capital industry is still at the place where we all need we all need the whole industry to work well. You know, we don't want to be in that silly competitive position where you wish ill on your competitors. That doesn't help anyone.
I mean, this is so true, particularly of first-time fund managers who are inexperienced and struggle to raise capital and don't have the systems in place and don't have a track record on which a fund of funds would kind of make an investment decision. We were fortunate in that we've raised 2 funds over 9 years where we had a mandate to allow us to invest in first-time fund managers. And so we probably have between our various funds 10 first-time fund managers. Some of them are now in their second funds. And the amount of effort that it takes to help those managers is enormous, but it has to be done. Because if we don't have managers who've started somewhere, we're not going to have a mature ecosystem. So I think that it is now time to open up and see if we have 1 or 2 questions, which is, I think, all we have time for. And then we'll hand back to Gugu. Anything? Oh, there are 2 at the back. A gentleman and I think a lady. I can't see a... Yes, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Jabulo from eSquared Venture Builder. I think my question is more around the gap, the fund manager gap, especially early stage and emerging fund managers. In the spirit of collaboration, I guess, initiatives like SAFCA have tried to initiate emerging fund managers, they've done acceleration, but they didn't have a relationship with the LP. So they've built these emerging fund managers, but didn't connect them to capital. My thinking, someone like SME, who has the exposure, who understands how emerging fund managers develop, can you not maybe run the fund manager masterclass or program with the LP? So you are working directly with Allan Gray, Sanlam, etc., creating these emerging fund managers. That then connects you to capital directly. What are your thoughts around that?
I mean, it's the constant criticism of first-time fund manager programs is that many emerging managers complain that we've been through this program and another program and the other program, but we still don't manage to access capital. It's a real constraint, and it's one that we're thinking about how one overcomes. But I accept completely the point that you're making.
I would just add, in my experience, it's an apprenticeship model. Any master class or these, I'm sorry if I'm an insult, like these SAFCA programs, they do not work. This is not something you learn in academia, y'all. You learn by doing. That's why I think the BIPAP program was phenomenal. I'll just speak for Secha. In our 10 years now, we have hired 18 different operator investors. 80% of them have been women, 70% have been black women and their first job in finance. And now 6 of them have gone on to join other venture capital or private equity funds. That's how you do it. That's how you open the door. Because they weren't going to hire them unless they had deal experience, unless they had written a term sheet that they could do a DCF or know the difference between a convert or mezz debt. And just, you don't learn these things in a book, or if you do, you don't know how to translate on the field. So I don't think master classes will work. I think it's apprenticeship models. We need to have bigger teams, and it helps if they're subsidized at the existing funds, and then those are our future emerging managers.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's extremely practical. The stuff is so practical. And I would say that to me, if I think about what is the number one reason why fund managers that are otherwise well positioned, well qualified, that have been through these sorts of programs don't actually raise money, it's because they haven't generated good pipeline opportunities. They haven't, when they show their opportunities to the LPs, if the LPs go, I'm actually not really that interested in this, that's where it falls down most of the time.
Next question.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm the Susie that was being spoken about earlier. So I'm going to take this opportunity to have the audacity to speak on behalf of founders. The conversation about capital in South Africa is a very frustrating one because it's not a lack of capital, it's the behavior of the capital. And entrepreneurship is a conversation about risk capacity of the ecosystem that you're building. And we largely focus on the lack of appetite of young, talented people or professionals to go into entrepreneurship. And there's various ecosystems, and the foundation is one of those that's trying to address that at the source. And then institutions like E-Squared dovetail into that. And the job of E-Squared, what makes E-Squared really unique and empowering for Alan Gray Fellows, and hopefully now they're trying to expand the impact of the ethos of E-Squared, is the fact that it then understands that the other side of that equation, other than the individual, is the behavior of the capital, the institutions that deploy this capital and end up in a boardroom with a founder, right? And obviously E-Squared is a very large challenge. It's sector agnostic, stage agnostic. I don't know how they're doing their job. It sounds impossible to me. But generally speaking, when we talk about these ecosystems, what is it that fund and capital allocators like yourselves, you're deliberately doing to change the conversation about the lack of risk capacity in financial markets in South Africa, the banks and everybody else? Because that's where a lot of businesses choke and die, because of the lack of capacity for volatility, especially if you look at where the world is going now, where things are less certain. And if we do not adapt the culture of risk appetite across our financial ecosystem, we are going to be having these conversations circularly, and E-Squared will have its impact in its captive environment, and it's doing very well, and Alan Gray Fellows might do very well, but how do you turn the larger tide?
Can I take it? So funny enough, I was at a DIT event last night, and literally that was said, that the fact that this event is happening, the fact that we have certain fund managers in the room and people to have access to that shows that the tide is turning. So what you're speaking about, I agree. I don't think it's something that gets solved overnight. It's probably going to take another 20 years to get there. The entire ecosystem has to mature to that stage. Where banks start taking more risks, where individuals, you have more angel investors. Like in America, you can go sit on a subway and just say, give me money, and then the guy says, okay, and then you take it. But essentially, you have angel investors in South Africa, but it's not accessible to most people. It's, like you're saying, it's sitting in pools, and it stays in those pools. So what Fund of Funds is doing is trying to change that, right? Before that, you just have family offices in certain funds, and like I'm saying, if there's no way for an emerging fund manager to come into the space, then the existing fund managers stay in the space, and they just keep continuing to make money and only fund a certain sector, and it stays like that, never changes. So the job, what SASME is doing, bringing in new fund managers is very important, because that then creates access to newer markets. But those individuals in those funds also need to mature themselves, and as they're maturing, you'll see knock-on effects. I think I'm a product of this entire thing, actually. Like Claudia suggested, well, not suggested, stated, I'm a founder of Ozo. Before Ozo, I was just a normal person, a normal cog in the wheels of society, not having access to anything, having ideas, wanting to start businesses. Where do you get money from? Friends, family, and fools. All my friends have no money, all my family has no money, and we all fools. But we all broke. So there's no access to that funding. Where do you get it from? I had to then start a business with a French individual, in fact, that actually helped us get access to this funding. Building that, growing a business to a certain point, creating the jobs, all of that. Going through incubators, going through master classes, all of these things, networking, learning, and then getting an exit. Once I got the exit, started doing this thing. We've been running Aeons for 4 years now. The difference I've seen in the ecosystem from when I started in 2014 to now, it's worlds apart. When I never knew something like E-Squared existed until I met, I guess, Gladwin. By 2023, I found out about E-Squared. What I realized in that 1 year was what I was trying to build is what E-Squared has already done. But where E-Squared is now took so long. It wasn't just the establishment of it in the early 2000s. It was what Dr. Alan Gray first had to build in order to enable this, in order to build up to this where it is now. They talk about that 20 fossils. I think you're part of the fossils, right? in 2025 that was established and becomes this pyramid that just opens and opens, and you see more and more people coming through. So it does take time. It's a flywheel. It's going to kick in with time. Just have patience. And yeah, the fund of funds must just keep on doing the job that they're doing.
Thanks, Mitch. Do we have time for one more question? There was a gentleman at the back, I think. No? Oh, there we go. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon to the panel. My name is Tato. I'm also one of the E-Squared team members. My question, I think Rory touched on it a little bit, but it's this interesting dynamic that somebody once explained to me that, you know, it's interesting as a founder, right? Your plan is to have your idea and then you build your business step by step into scale, right, over time. So you can raise R1 million, 5 million, 10 million over time. Whereas the fund manager has a really interesting problem is that they have to start with scale, right? So they have to start with the 500 million. They have to start with the 750 million. So the question I have for the panel is, I think we've sort of settled it, that track record is a key part that we're looking out for, or that from a fund of funds perspective that you're looking out for. In fact, that I also look out for. But the key thing is around in our economy, when we think about emerging fund manager, what is the thing, or what are the things that are key in and around the not having track record? Every fund manager was an emerging fund manager. So what are the things that we are looking out for, that you are looking out for specifically, that says, you know what, I think I can, you know, give this person or this team 100 million, give them the scale at day one so that they can run for 10 years? So that's my question.
So I'll take this one, and I'm going to keep it short and sweet so that we can get you all to lunch. So as I said, we've backed, I think, about 10 first-time fund managers, and it is a huge risk. It's backing someone who's never done this before. And you allocate and then you pray. I mean, that is the truth of the matter. What do we look for? We look for individuals who have experience. So they've done this investment in our world. It's in VC before. So they have individual track record of having been an investor or worked in an investment team. They must have pipeline that they've worked on. They've identified companies that they believe are worthy of investment, and so that gives us the confidence that they're looking in the right places. So we look at their pipeline very closely. We need to know that they can live, that they're sustainable, so we need to ensure that they've got a fund, they've got commitments, or at least soft commitments from a number of other allocators or other investors, so that they don't raise a 50 million rand or 100 million rand fund, which means that they are living, on the smell of an oil rag. So we need to know that we're backing a fund that has the capacity, the sustainability to be able to survive 10 lean years before there's exits and before there's returns. So those are kind of the main sort of considerations that we would take in our due diligence. Obviously, there's the individuals and their own personal references, etc. But those are the typical issues that we would consider in our due diligence. And now I am going to say thank you all very much. Oh my goodness, is Gugu going to allow one more question? I don't think so. No, I'm so sorry. We'll chat afterwards. Thank you.
It is. Thank you, anytime. Good seeing you. I think the panel needs another round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, just given the feedback. Apologies, due to time, we're unable to take your question, but the panelists are available for networking and engagement just after we conclude the program today. And that goes for anyone else who might have robust themes that they'd like to bring up. But if anything, I think it's been refreshing for us to actually build up on the theme of understanding that we're all united on one goal: to continue with the objective of investing in entrepreneurs and businesses who will make an impact in South Africa's society, but of course across the continent as well. There's pure case studies that also show that we are working within the ecosystem of not only growing and developing these entrepreneurs, but the ecosystem within which they need to function. And more than anything, key takeaways from our Fund of Funds conversation is that we're making progress. It might be slow, but it's still progress. But more than anything, I think calls on us to actively share feedback and of course continue to engage on some of the innovative solutions that we can provide going forward. It's been fantastic having you all present with us, and as I look around the room, I know you've been patient with us, very patient, and we don't take it for granted. So I won't push my luck any further, given the time that you've shared and allocated with us today. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate the fact that you took your time, shared your knowledge, challenged with some questions, and most importantly, will ensure that as we reflect on this over the weekend, we all go back to our respective industries, organizations, and positions and ask ourselves, how do we go forward? We have the 2025 report and a gentle reminder to scan the QR code or visit the E-Squared website to be able to get a downloadable copy. And you can read through the metrics, the numbers, the figures, and understand just exactly how this was allocated right across the stream of opportunities for growth for entrepreneurs. But then within that too, you can also identify where you can partner, where you can collaborate, how we pay it forward to future entrepreneurs to ensure that they too are fighting fit. And maybe even a challenge to myself and colleagues in the media industry is how we amplify this messaging. There's no shortage of capital. There's no shortage of support. Yes, there's some elements that we might have to work on to adjust and reconfigure our risk appetite. But more than anything, we are aligned and need to make sure that we have clear objectives of accelerating the pace at which we meet these objectives. Not just for now, not just for a quick return, but really looking to make the impact in society that is sustainable and one that is tangible in the livelihoods of the people who live in this country. On that note, it has been fantastic having all of you with us here today. We really want to thank you for joining us in engaging and sharing some feedback. I do also want to thank the representatives who have joined us from the Alan and Jill Gray Philanthropies Company. Thank you so much for your time and, of course, perspective that you've shared with us. The Alan Gray Orbis Foundation as well, who are present, various partners and collaborators to E-Squared who have been with us in the room. We cannot forget the Board of Trustees who themselves have been present and, of course, sharing some insight on the back of the report. Executive leadership right across E-Squared that has also been present here today. And, of course, E-Squared talent. If you don't know how to identify them, you should know by now. They've been wearing their company logo and badges on their shoulder, or shirts rather, and wearing them today. As I acknowledge that, I do know that this has been a team effort, sleepless nights, tireless hours, to not only extract the data, pull it together, but ensure that it's here for all of us to be able to relish in. And with that, I'd like to welcome back Mr. G on stage. We are breaking the rules. Tulani is looking at me sideways. So, Mr. G, you need to make this worth our while. Is it on?
It's on. It was very on. I just wanted to take the time because, Gugu, thank you for allowing me to do this. I need to celebrate the team that made this happen. So if you can please join me and give a round of applause to the eSquared team at large. But I needed to make special mention and draw special attention to a few people within the room that have made this event and the report in front of you happen. I want to ask Tulani, Priscilla, and Audrey if you can please come up. Sorry for putting you on the spot. The reason I asked them to come up is, firstly, what you don't know is when we were reviewing the document, Tulani yesterday said it in jest, but I knew it was touching his heart, that I had 220 iterations of different things that needed to be fixed on the document, and they made it happen, so congratulations. 223. Yeah. 223. You laughed last night at 20 to 1. 20 to 1. I sent a message saying I can still see a double full stop on one of them. And so, Odds, Tulani, Priscilla, just from the bottom of my heart and everybody here, thank you so much for pulling off an amazing event. We just arrived here. For making it happen. But secondly, I just want to honor you for the hard work and effort you put, late nights you put in to make this event happen. I've asked Taz. Oh, there she is. Perfect. If we can just hand that over to the team. Thank you, Taz. And yeah, once again, if we can just give the guys a round of applause.
Thank you so much, Mr. G. And I think more than anything, this is a reminder to all of us in the spaces that we're in, right? That yes, we might focus on the capital. Yes, we want to understand how the ecosystem works and what pipeline we have, how we're allocating, and what the results are. But it all fundamentally starts with us, people, the peers, the colleagues, the partners that you have here in the room, seeing them and acknowledging them for their presence and, of course, their time. And with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you and acknowledge each and every one of you for your time, your patience, your partnership, your ululation, your applause, and your focus, and even your interaction with our band and myself and various panelists and colleagues who have been up on stage here today. We appreciate that you've also afforded us extra time despite the delays in the program, but truly hope that the impact of today's messaging is felt, is understood, and will continue to be built on. With that said, as we conclude what has been the official launch of the eSquared 2025 Impact Investing Report, we will have an opportunity to break out and go for lunch. Please do join us and indulge in lunch, but more so, do make an effort to also visit the entrepreneurs who have their companies on showcase today. Right across this room, you'll be able to engage with them, understand the investments that are being made, and also acknowledge and see them for who they are. We also thank the band for their performance earlier on today. Next time we interact with the team, we'll be more appreciative of the multifaceted talent that does exist at eSquared. But as we wrap up and conclude and finally officially conclude and close the program for today, we do also want to ensure that you're able just to view some of the entrepreneurs who are present with us at eSquared and that we've invested in. So we will play 2 videos. They are about 5 minutes long, which will give you some insight into the entrepreneurs that we're profiling and the work and the efforts they have. Should you be ready to join us for lunch, feel free to join us outside and have a profitable, a impactful, and wonderful day further. Thank you so much for joining us for the official launch of the E-Squared Impact Program.
Imagine life without easy access to water, a reality for 2.2 billion people facing roughly a 6-kilometer trek in rural communities to access water. For Kusini Water, water is life, and their water champions are the heroes. This World Water Day, let's celebrate their triumphs and challenges in ensuring water access and conservation. It's the lifeline of thriving communities.
I'm from Nkangala village in Mount Fletcher in the Eastern Cape, and I studied in Cape Town. That's where I found a difference when it comes to water qualities. This is pure water quality water, and it's natural. However, when they sourcing the waters from springs, sometimes the water has contaminated because there is competition between humans and the cattle. So I saw an opportunity to supply the communities with the clean, purified waters. Becoming a Kusini Water Champion, they've provided me water purification machine. People and the number of communities had then had a trust in the product. It has been a step closer to my dreams. This has helped me and communities as well. And I wish these waters can be reached to a vast number of communities.
The water kiosk started as a mitigation in the cholera outbreak in the Hammanskraal area for the community to have healthy, pure drinking water. I was a person who got interested in the water science. So Kusini took out Water Champions applications whereby you apply and then you get a chance to pitch in front of investors about becoming a social impactor. We had a boot camp whereby we were taught about the whole systems and membranes. Kusini and the Nedbank afforded us the whole of the systems from the container, the whole of the water purification system, the filling tables. So now the kiosk now has the ability to supply the whole of Gegana Gardens, Mandela and other neighboring villages with clean, pure drinking water. So since the program started, I became the breadwinner of my family, whereby I have the abilities now to provide for my family.
I'm a farmer around this Karaba village. So growing up around the village, we had a problem because we don't have clean water. For us to get water, we have to go to the mountains just to get the spring water. And then the water is not purified, the water is not clean. So ahead of the Kusini Water Champion, then, I decided to call them, and then they enrolled us on their courses. They made us that we understand how it's done, how we purify the water so that we can provide clean water to the community. So they no longer rely only on the spring water. They can also get water from the Kusini kiosk. Thanks to Nedbank for helping us starting this business, growing this business. Hence, we want to expand this business to the other communities so that we can help the other communities that do not have access to clean water.
Our water purification system uses locally sourced waste macadamia nut shells as well as nanofibers that we synthesize locally. The pairing of the waste macadamia nut shells with the membrane technology that we have allows us to get water from any water source, and we convert that to water that is accessible for all. We believe the solution to solving the global water shortages being rooted within the communities. So we've designed a program where we are finding local people within communities that are most affected by lack of access to safe drinking water. By giving them the technology, the skills, the financing, as well as the hand-holding mentorship that they need in order to build systems, operate those systems within their communities, and then look after the water. With the Nedbank and Kusini Water Project, we have been able to create well over 111 jobs within South Africa. And within this 111 jobs, 40 of these young people that are working within all 9 provinces, they've been able to provide well over 10 million liters of safe drinking water within our communities.
Celebrate how far we've come, and we are so thankful for the special people that are in the room that have supported us along the journey, our investors, our mentors that were there right from the start, the media that is here, that is telling our story across the country at this point. So yeah, it's just Finmaster to the world, man.
But I'm curious about the 27 iterations, and at which point did you decide that this was ready to actually test in a live environment?
So we have this mentor, he's called Puisa. He was like, guys, the product is ready. You need to put it in the market. And we're like, no, it's not ready. We haven't tested it enough. You know, like, no, it's not ready. And he's like, I don't care. July of 2024 is savings month, and I want 2 complete copies that I can buy and sell to someone. And at this point, we had already spent so much time and money developing this thing. So we really needed that nudge to say, hey, put this thing in the market now. Like, you can see people are having fun. And we had always had 2 questions. Did you have fun and did you learn something? And then some other questions like, what did you like, what didn't you like? And when people consistently said, I had fun, I learned something, and there's nothing I would change, that's when we said, okay, we're ready to make some copies of this thing.
What's next with the game?
Oh man, so many things. Cool, so this year, obviously, we're launching exclusive books nationwide, which we're very happy about. Woo! So we're currently in 54 stores, including Takealot, our own website, and then all of the exclusive books stores, some local stores in Cape Town. So this year, our goal is really to get it out there in all of the retail channels.
Perfect,